What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was the only man allowed inside the all-female ninja village? If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comment. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. So let us start the story.
Why Yondaime, why? Why did you sacrifice yourself without hesitation? Didn't you know that I was more willing to put my life on the line for this village than you? I would have gladly used that jutsu to defeat the Kyuubi. You shouldn't have died. It should have been me. Sarutobi was sitting at his brand new desk in the Hokage Tower, shedding his share of tears for the former Hokage, who more than deserved them. The Yondaime's desk had been removed the day before, only 3 days after he had died. The villagers were desperate to return the village to the way it was. So desperate that they had replaced the man who had saved them all with the man who had wished he had died instead. In his mind, Sarutobi believed that he was no longer fit for the job. That's why the headdress that he had been so proud to call his own back when he was Hokage, sat on the desk in front of him unused. He no longer had any desire to put it on. It still belongs to the Yondaime. Sarutobi thought, I shouldn't wear it until his funeral. A high-pitched noise broke the third Hokage from his thoughts. The old man, who had passed his prime years ago, looked to his right where several baskets had been laid in a row. In each one was a baby, children that were orphaned by the Kyuubi attack, and needed a place to stay. Sarutobi volunteered to watch them himself, since all of the orphanages were gone, stomped into dust by the nine-tailed fox. One of the orphans in particular was special. One with blonde hair and blue eyes, a rarity in Fire Country. He also happened to be the one that was crying. Sarutobi took a milk bottle out of his desk, and brought it to the baby boy. As he fed the child milk, he carefully examined the seal on his stomach. It was clearly visible, even though 3 days had passed since the Kyuubi attack. Until that seal disappears, I will have to keep Naruto here. I can't let anyone discover what is sealed inside of him. If that happens, all that remains of the Yondaime's legacy will be lost. He picked Naruto up and carried him to his desk, where he pulled a shirt onto him. This should at least keep prying eyes from getting an unfortunate glimpse of the seal. All that is left is to wait until it disappears entirely. Then Naruto will be safe. The Hokage set Naruto back into his crib, just as he heard a knock on the door. Who is it? He asked loudly. I am busy in here. I have much paperwork to handle, and no time for interruptions. The Hokage ended the statement with an audible humph. I am sorry Hokage-sama. I tried to tell them that you wouldn't want to be disturbed, but they won't listen. The Hokage recognized this as the voice of his personal assistant. He had placed her in charge of keeping unwanted visitors out, so he could wait for the seal to disappear. When she talked again, her voice was much quieter, almost a whisper. They have weapons, Hokage-sama. I think that they mean business. All of them are waiting outside the tower. The Hokage snatched the hat off of his desk. This might be serious, he thought. He walked over to the window in his office, placing the cap on his head. I guess this means that I am officially the Hokage now. I must not show any weakness in front of these youngsters. Time to show them that the village is under my control. The Hokage threw the door open. Where are they? He said, expecting to see his assistant on the other side. To his horror, she was much further away, being held in an arm lock by a single person who was part of a crowd that looked like it was made up of every male in the village that wasn't a ninja, and even a few females. What's going on? The Hokage started, before he felt himself being grabbed by the shirt and shoved into the door to his office. Instinctively, his hand shot for his kunai holster, but just before he drew it in order to kill his assailant, he realized that whoever it was talking to him. Move out of the way. I've come here to put an end to what the Yondaime started. The Hokage looked down at the person who was still holding his shirt and realized that it was none other than Hyuga Hiashi. What are you trying to do, Hiashi? The Hokage asked. Is there a reason that you are pointing a blade at me? The Hyuga looked the Hokage right in the eyes, his own eyes already in Byakugan mode. Veins popping out all over the Hyuga's face. You know what this is about, Hokage-sama. I know that you are protecting the nine-tailed demon fox. Hiashi spit out the sama like a curse word. The Hokage couldn't stop sweat from pouring out of his face, but it only made him look guilty of the crime that the Hyuga just accused him of. Shit, he knows. The Hokage decided to buy himself time to find a way out of this situation. What do you mean? The demon fox is dead. How can I be hiding him? You think that you can pull the wool over all of our eyes, don't you, Hokage-sama? Of course I know what happened. Hiyashi put down the Hokage so that he could point at his eyes. These eyes see everything that happens in this village. I know that the Yondaime failed. I know that he couldn't find a way to destroy the Kyuubi. I also know that the Shiki fusion that killed him and supposedly defeated the Kyuubi was actually meant to seal it in a human so that it would finally be vulnerable. Finally, I know that for some reason that you have decided not to announce, you are harboring the child inside of your office as we speak. You have been checking on that seal of his every day since the attack, so that makes me think that you are trying to find a way to hide the fact that that child is a monster. Hiyashi pointed his knife at the Hokage. Move out of the way so that I can finish the Kyuubi off. If you do, I will be willing to pretend that you weren't protecting it. The Hokage shook his head slowly. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Suddenly the crowd grew violent, shaking the pitchforks and torches they brought with them in the air. Treason, one member of the group shouted. Our own Hokage has betrayed us. Another one cried. The shouts of treason and betrayal continued to grow louder as the crowd grew so violent that they started to lay waste to everything breakable within their reach. Silence, the Hokage screamed. Despite what you may think, I am still the Hokage. I will have order in my village. The crowd actually quieted down when the sky suddenly grew cloudy and lightning bolts shot down from the sky in response from all the chakra that the cage was releasing. Now, you didn't let me finish. I cannot allow any harm to come to Naruto Uzumaki. Contrary to what you all believe, attacking and killing that boy will not end the Kyuubi's reign of terror. According to the Yondaime himself, killing Uzumaki will most likely. The Hokage pulled out his pipe and lit it. He took a few puffs, leaving his sentence unfinished. What will killing him do? Hiyashi asked. Why, it would release the Kyuubi into this village once more. The Hokage said while continuing to puff his pipe. You could hear a pin drop through the complete silence that started when the crowd realized what they had almost done. The Hokage started to turn around to return to his office. He mentally sighed, damn, that was really close. Good thing I went to acting school like the Yondaime suggested, or I would have never been able to sell a blatant lie like that one. Right before he finished stepping through his doorway, the cage felt a hand on his shoulder. He slowly turned to see Hiyashi, his Byakugan still active. Shit, I forgot that the Hyuga were natural lie detectors. I see your point, Hokage-sama. Due to the nature of sealing techniques, it is possible that the Kyuubi could be released if its container is destroyed. The Hokage tried not to let the surprise show on his face. He actually believed me. Maybe the Hyuga are all hype after all. Outside of his head, the Hokage was still puffing his pipe calmly. But, Hiyashi continued, Konoha still has no desire to harbor a demon within its walls. Members of the crowd had a mixed reaction to this statement. Some remained silent, still processing what would have happened if they had killed Naruto and released the Kyuubi. Others had new life breathed in them when they heard the man that organized the riot speak again. These members of the crowd grew rowdy again. That's right, we don't want a goddamn demon living among us. Hokage tried to stay calm, using the pipe more like a stress ball than a smoking utensil, pouring all of the tension he was feeling into his smoke rings. What are you suggesting now, Hiyashi? He said in his calmest voice. Why, exile of course. He can be some other village's problem. Shit, hadn't been expecting that one. The Hokage thought. That isn't going to work either. Do you think that there is a village that would be willing to accept Naruto at a time like this? Tsuchikagore, Sunahakagore, and even the hidden village in the clouds all have their own demon problems to deal with. They would never willingly accept another demon into their villages, and if we sent Naruto to them without revealing what he was, that would start a war. Is that what you want, Hiyashi? Another great war. Hiyashi smiled. I think that you forgot a village, Hokage-sama. The Hokage's concentration finally broke. He put his pipe out and stuck it back in his pocket. There is no way that I'm sending Naruto to Blood Mist Village. They'll rip him apart there. Oh, the Hiyashi said. He seemed to be enjoying breaking the Hokage's will. You almost sound worried about what happens to that demon brat? Are you sure that you are really interested in the safety of this village? Or do you secretly have an agenda that involves that Kyuubi brat? Don't tell me that you are planning to benefit from the Yondaime's death. The Hokage glanced out of the corner of his eye at the crowd of people outside his office. He couldn't spot a single person whose arms weren't crossed, with their teeth pulled back in a snarl. Even his own assistant. They looked like a pack of violent hounds, and if the Hokage didn't give in to their request, they would definitely riot. Hokage didn't have the manpower to stop something like that, especially with 70% of his ninja in the hospital due to the Kyuubi attack. He looked up at the night sky, as a raindrop fell from the heavens and touched his nose. "Very well, Hiashi. You win," the Hokage said, allowing the confidence he had been displaying up until now to dissipate for the first time. "Oh, come off it, Hokage-sama," Hiashi said. "I don't win, we all win." The crowd cheered madly at the second part to this statement. "So, how will we go about delivering the child to the hidden village in the mist?" Hiashi said happily. The Hokage whistled and two ninjas suddenly appeared to his right and left. They were none other than Kakashi, the current Anbu captain, and Kurenai, the only other available ninja at the moment. The Hokage turned around and faced the two ninja he had just called. "Go pack, I am assigning you a mission. Bring enough clothes to last you for a week, and enough food to last the two of you and one other for that much time." "One other, Hokage-sama?" Kurenai asked. "You will be delivering a baby to Kirikagore. I will be sending a request to the Mizukage to transfer the boy into his village in as little as 15 minutes by carrier pigeon. He should get the message in 2 days, so by the time you get there everything should already be set up. Now start packing, and return here once you are done." "Hi, Hokage-sama," both ninjas said before beginning a teleportation jutsu to bring them to their homes. Right before Kakashi left, the Hokage grabbed him by the shoulder. "Wait for one moment, Kakashi, there is something else I want to send with you," the Hokage said. Kakashi stayed put as the Hokage went back into his office. Minutes later the Hokage returned, supporting a large blade in his hands. It was completely devoid of any special decorations or markings, but Kakashi could feel great strength emanating from inside the sword. It was also quite large, several times bigger than the type of sword that most ninja preferred, but not so much so that it couldn't be swung with just one hand if you were very strong. In other words, larger than a ninjutsu, a small sword often wielded by assassins, but smaller than a zanbutsu, the large horseslayer that samurai used against horsemen. "What's that, Hokage-sama?" Kakashi asked respectively. "This is one of the 7 swords of the mist. It was one of the spoils that Konoha received for defeating Kiri in the Great War that preceded the peace that we have now. I want to send it back with Naruto. It's his sword now, I hope he makes good use of it," the Hokage said. He handed Kakashi the sword. "Make sure that while you're packing, you figure out how you're going to carry this. It's a bit heavier than it looks." Kakashi tied the sword and sheath to his back before teleporting away. The Hokage gave Hiashi one final glance before walking back into his office. He stopped briefly before closing the door. "I hope you're happy now, Hiashi." Hiashi smiled. "Very." The next day, Kakashi and Kurenai both departed from the village, carrying a baby and one of the 7 swords of the mist. Neither ninja understood exactly what was going on, but they would see this mission through no matter confused the things that they were delivering made them. They didn't waste any time with idle chit-chat, since the words, "move with utmost haste," and "don't let anything distract you from your primary objective," were underlined several times in the mission scrolls they had been given. Naturally, Kurenai had the baby, which she had placed in a special baby harness that was strapped to her stomach. It allowed her to feed Naruto and change his diaper while running at full sprint. Kakashi was carrying the sword, which wasn't that heavy once you got used to the weight. This was obviously an easier job than changing a baby's diaper at 30 miles an hour. The two ninja opted to move towards their target on foot until they reached the water. Then they waited for a special passageway to open that only Kirikagore's allies could use. It led underground, allowing a well-trained ninja to travel to Mist Village underground instead of waiting for a boat to come and take them there. For ninja that were Chunin and up, sprinting was faster than using a boat. A week later, and both ninja arrived at their destination. They had made it just in time. Kakashi whipped out the scroll that outlined their mission one last time. "Alright, we are supposed to deliver the child and sword to the Mizukage, or the person that he arranges to meet with us and take them. After that is done, we can leave." Kakashi started to roll the scroll back up, but Kurenai stopped him. She pointed to the bottom line of the scroll. "You missed this part. Make sure that you gather the replacement child from the Mist Ninja. Replacement child? The Hokage didn't mention that to us. Kakashi just shrugged. Well, it's written in the scroll, so we have to handle that as well. He took the scroll back from Kurenai and rolled it back up. Let's go. Kurenai and Kakashi took their first steps into the hidden village of the mist, but found that it was surprisingly quiet and still within the village's walls. Kakashi scanned the area but could find no signs of life anywhere. It wasn't until he turned around that he realized why. I forgot that they must have been waiting on us to arrive since they received the message from the Hokage. An entire crowd of Mist Ninja had appeared behind Kakashi and Kurenai, barring them from leaving the village. Kakashi willed himself to keep his hand from shooting to his kunai holster. He knew that if he showed any signs of hostility, the Mist Ninja would cut him down. One of the ninjas separated himself from the crowd of Mist Ninja, stepping away from the group and stopping only a few feet away from Kakashi and Kurenai. Are the two of you the ninja the Hokage sent? The ones who are delivering Kirikagor a brand new tool of war? His face was wrapped in tape, only leaving his eyes and hair visible. He looked somewhat like a mummy, and judging from the position of his cheekbones, he was smiling. Kurenai stepped forward, Naruto still strapped to her chest. "Hi," she yelled while saluting the ninja in front of her. "My name is Kurenai, and that's Kakashi. We are here to see that this child, Uzumaki Naruto, is successfully transferred from Konoha to Kiri." She removed Naruto from the harness and held him so that the ninja could get a closer look at his village's new ninja. "So that's the Kyuubi's container," the Mist Nin said. "Well, I am the captain of Kirikagur's Anbu, Momoichi Zabuza. The Mizukage has sent me here to accept this child and the sixth sword of the mist in his stead, in addition to—" Zabuza snapped his fingers. This caused one of the other Mist Ninja to step forward, carrying what appeared to be two toddlers in his arms. Seeing that Konoha receives this child in return for Naruto. "Very well," Kakashi said. "Let's trade then." Zabuza took Naruto, and a second Mist Ninja took Naruto's sword. Kakashi was left empty-handed after giving up Naruto's sword. Kurenai was forced to take Naruto's replacement, but she let out a squeal when she discovered that this new child had two heads, and one of them brushed against her face. "What is this thing?" she squealed. "I mean," she took several short breaths. "Why does he have two heads?" Zabuza shrugged. "We don't know. We found him digging around in a dumpster like a raccoon. We just call him Sakin, and we call his extra head Yukon. From what we've discovered so far about him, we've determined that the extra head is part of an ancient bloodline. We assure you that he will become extremely powerful if you make sure to train him in the use of his extra body." Kurenai looked at the child she was holding in her arms very closely. "Extra body?" Zabuza bowed. "You'll see in a few years." He motioned towards the ninja behind him, and they formed a path for Kurenai and Kakashi to lead through. "If you don't have anything else to give Kirikagor, I think that our business here is concluded." Kakashi bowed as well. "See you later then." Kakashi started walking. "Come on, Kurenai." The pair from Konoha left Kirikagor, and re-entered the tunnel that they came to Water Country through. Kurenai turned to Kakashi, still carrying Sakin and Yukon in her arms, since she couldn't fit him in the baby harness, with the extra head in the way and all. "Do you think that Naruto will be alright in that village?" Kakashi shook his head. "I doubt it, but you shouldn't worry. He's survived worse already." Kurenai didn't understand what Kakashi meant, but she kept on walking. So began Naruto's life as one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, and so ended his life as a Konoha ninja. Zabuza lifted up the blonde-haired child that he held in his arms, and observed it more closely. It looks scrawny, and judging by how he looks now, I doubt that this kid will even reach 6 feet as an adult. This kid is not threatening in any way, but Konoha was so frightened by the demon inside of him that they gave him away. Naruto giggled as he peered directly into Zabuza's eyes. A grin was barely visible through the wrappings on the Mist Nin's face. "Konoha will regret letting something this powerful go. I will be certain to use the powers of this demon to my own advantage." A second Anbu approached from behind Zabuza. "Momoichi-sama, we must bring this child to the Mizukage. He wants to determine how the power of this demon can best be exploited." Zabuza lowered Naruto to his side. "Very well. Let's deliver this child then." Zabuza and his Anbu entourage marched through the village towards their cage's tower. While they walked, Zabuza observed the village. To an outsider, Kirigakure would seem like a pitiful excuse for a home. It lacked the tall buildings and beautiful weather that someone from Konoha would be used to. Instead, the people lived in shabby, rundown shacks and it was always raining. Even now, Zabuza was forced to use an adjacent ninja's umbrella to shield Naruto from the downpour that had just started. Naruto began to cry, as a bolt of lightning flashed through the sky. I wonder how long this kid will stay pitiful and weak in a village like this. Zabuza turned to the ninja to his right, who just happened to be female. He handed Naruto to her. Shut him up. The woman's bodily expression showed that she was angry that she was singled out, instead of, say, one of the male ninja, but she still complied with Zabuza's order. She cooed gently to the baby, and that calmed him down a little. Minutes later, the group arrived at the Mizukage's office. All but Zabuza and the female Anbu left, returning to their duties around the village. Zabuza, and the ninja that was now holding Naruto, stepped into the cage's office, which was set up more or less like the throne room that an emperor would have. There was even a long, red carpet leading to the chair where the Mizukage was sitting. The legendary Water Shadow was resting both of his arms on his armrests, his hat covering the upper half of his face, although there was a grin on the lower half. Hello, Zabuza-kun. I see that you took your time bringing the monster fox here. Monster fox? Zabuza said, as if the nickname surprised him. The Mizukage stood up from his seat, and shuffled over to where Zabuza was. It was awe-inspiring, how when he walked it seemed as if his feet weren't even touching the ground. Yes. He made his way right over to Naruto. He tickled the baby's chin, generating a few giggles from him. A monster like this needs a nickname. I've been moving back and forth between calling him Monster Fox or the Demon of the Mist. Too bad that you've already taken one of those two names. He took the baby from the female nin's arms and threw him up and down. I guess that Monster Fox will have to do. The Mizukage suddenly turned his gaze onto Zabuza. His eyes formed a deep scowl. At least until you die, Zabuza-kun. Zabuza resisted the urge to shudder. Whatever. Just tell me why you asked for me to go and get the child specifically. This is the type of assignment that is normally reserved for Chunin. A creepy smirk enveloped the Mizukage's face. Isn't it obvious? I just wanted you to be the first mist ninja that the boy would see. After all, you will be the one in charge of training him. Zabuza simply smiled, an action that was made apparent because his cheekbones became visible through his wrappings. Just as I figured. He thought, is that all you want, Mizukage-sama? I thought that you would have bigger plans than this for the Kyuubi's container. Sorry, but I couldn't think of anything on such short notice. That's why I have brilliant ninja like you around, though. Keep the kid with you, never let him out of your sight. I expect great things from this kid, or you could say that I have great expectations for the Kyuubi in him. It was strong enough to bring Konoha to its knees after all. The Mizukage motioned for Zabuza to come closer and began to hand Naruto off to him. Just as Zabuza reached to take Naruto from him, the cage jerked the boy away. He whispered to Zabuza quietly, so that only he could hear what he said next. Remember Zabuza, the monster fox is my weapon. If you abuse my trust in you by using this boy to further your own goals, I will do to you what I've been planning on doing for a long time, and grind you into a bloody pulp. He finished handing Zabuza the boy, and his expression once again assumed a cheerful tone. As Zabuza walked away from the throne, toting Naruto in his arms, he heard the Mizukage's voice, don't forget to teach Naruto how to use that sword of his, Zabuza-kun. Zabuza bowed as he exited the throne room, and dismissed the female Anbu so she could return home. He took Naruto to his home, which happened to be the Anbu barracks just outside of the cage's tower. Fortunately, an Anbu captain like Zabuza received a special office, the size of an apartment building. He had already arranged for his team to set up a room for Naruto. As he placed the child in his crib he thought to himself, raising this kid from infancy will be tough, but the payoff will be more than worth it. The Mizukage is foolish, entrusting something this powerful in my care. With the Kyuubi as one of my subordinates, I will surely destroy that man. Zabuza imagined the Mizukage bloody corpse at his feet as he laid his sword beside his own bed. He fell asleep dreaming about his victory over his most hated enemy. 5 years have passed since Naruto was first born, and he was sent to the hidden village of the mist. Naruto was never told about the village that he originally came from, and believes in his heart that he was born in the mist, and is somehow related to Zabuza. Zabuza himself hasn't given Naruto any details, choosing only to talk to the boy when he was barking out orders or training him. Again, this time, hit the target. Naruto's hands were shaking, the palms of them covered in calluses from handling weapons. At the moment, he was holding kunai in each hand. He threw one of them at a target that was set up 10 meters away on a tree. The kunai fell short, and Naruto fell to the ground. Zabuza grunted, "Pitiful. You should be able to last much longer than this. Is this how well you will perform when you actually face this man?" Zabuza was referring to the target itself, which looked suspiciously like the Mizukage. Naruto stood to his feet, and threw another kunai at the target. It hit it directly in the forehead. Zabuza walked up to Naruto and patted him on the head. "Good job. Finish throwing the last 4 and then you can take a break." "Oi, Zabuza." Zabuza turned around, and could see the Mizukage approaching from the distance. He mentally cursed to himself. "What does this guy want? I need to talk to you." He approached the training grounds, gliding over the moss that covered the grass like a phantom. He eyed Naruto briefly, as the boy threw his last kunai at the target. It lodged itself into the torso, leaving the Mizukage's image so covered in metal that only the face was visible, minus the forehead and left eye. "Interesting choice for a training target, Zabuza-kun." He sneered as he said this. "What do you want?" Zabuza asked harshly. "Can't you see that we're training? I want you to cut Naruto-kun's training short for today. I have a mission for you." Naruto approached Zabuza after gathering his kunai and placing them in the bucket where he got them from. "Who's this, Zabuza-sensei? Why's he here?" Zabuza turned to his charge, a grin present on his face. "I'm surprised that you don't recognize him. You've been hurling kunai at him for over 2 hours." Recognition became visible on Naruto's face. "Oh, you're that guy that I have to defeat in order to earn Zabuza-sensei's respect." Naruto repeated what Zabuza told him constantly. The Mizukage smiled. "Very funny, Zabuza-kun. I am actually the Mizukage, Naruto, the strongest ninja in all of Water Country." The cage approached closer and closer to Naruto, his face slowly morphing from a grin to a scowl. "I earned my title by fighting in countless battles and killing hundreds of ninja who thought too highly of themselves. I even killed the previous Mizukage when he resisted my appointment." The cage's gaze deepened as he brought his face even closer to Naruto's. His eyes took on a slight reddish tone. "I could never be defeated by anyone who lives in this village." The veins in the cage's eyes were clearly visible to Naruto at this point. "Especially not you." Almost instantaneously, the scowl disappeared from the cage's face, and the smile he was wearing before returned. "Keep training though, I could definitely use someone like you in my personal guard." Naruto walked away from the Mizukage once their exchange ended. What a creepy guy. The Mizukage began to converse with Zabuza next. "Do you remember last year, when the daimyo ordered us to destroy all of the families that possessed advanced bloodlines, Zabuza?" Zabuza recalled the mission that the cage was referring to in great detail. "Yes, over 10 ninja clans were annihilated by the Anbu. I was in charge of that operation." "Well, Zabuza-kun, it seems like you missed one." The way that the Mizukage said it made this statement seem like a taunt. "Huh? There's no way I could have." The cage cut him off. "A man from a village just east of Kirigakure just claimed yesterday that his wife carried an advanced bloodline and that she managed to pass her bloodline onto their son. 2 missed nin with advanced bloodlines still live? Where are they now? I'll take care of them." Zabuza strapped his kunai on. "That will not be necessary. The man that reported this information to us also said that he managed to kill his wife. Even with her bloodline, she wasn't much of a fighter. The son managed to escape, but he hasn't had any ninja training, either. If there's no problem, then what is this mission you brought up?" The Mizukage shrugged. "The boy's name is Haku. He's hanging out at the bridge at the east of this village. I just want you to go talk to him. You know, cheer him up since his mom just died. You don't want me to kill him?" The Mizukage shook his head and then turned around. He called to Zabuza over his shoulder. "Leave Naruto here with me. I've got something to show him." Zabuza walked off in the other direction. "Very well. Oompa doompa oompa doompa oompa, like my brakes? Oompa doompa oompa. I like it better than a row of X's, Oompa doompa." The Mizukage took Naruto a short ways away from the training grounds to a lake. It was drizzling lightly today, a refreshing change from the snow that Kirigakure normally had. Then again, it was summer. Naruto was still tired from all the training he had been doing. He didn't take nicely to having to walk around when he could be resting. Why can't you show me whatever you want to show me where we were before? Just be quiet. You should be happy that I am taking the time to show you this. The Mizukage stepped out to the edge of the water, and pointed his palm toward the lake. He kept his back straight as he did this, and kept his left arm at his side. What are you doing? Once you see this, you'll know why I can never be defeated by you. The cage grunted, and a large amount of energy was suddenly released from his body. Naruto, who did not yet know what chakra was, could only feel that the air around him had become extremely thick. The cage formed a single seal, the dragon, and enormous power was released from his body. Naruto could only watch, with his mouth agape, as the entire lake rose into the air and began to rotate around rapidly, forming a cyclone. The Mizukage turned towards Naruto, the hurricane behind him rotating violently. Take a close look, Naruto-kun. He bellowed. You better remember this the next time that you consider fighting me. If we do battle, he allowed the cyclone to die down, and the water fell back into the lake, sending a huge wave up into the air and then back down again. The Mizukage lowered his voice to a quiet whisper. You will find that I know techniques several times more powerful than this. Once again, Naruto walked away from the Mizukage mumbling to himself. This guy is really creepy. Minutes later, Naruto returned to the training grounds, and walked over to a stump to sit down. He started to doze off, but he heard a voice exclaim, "Is that the other boy that you were talking about, Zabuza-san?" Naruto looked up and saw what could be a very effeminate-looking boy, or a girl dressed suspiciously like a boy, walking beside Zabuza. The girlish boy thing looked to be about his age. Zabuza-sensei, who is this? Naruto asked. His name's Haku. 3 years have passed since Haku joined up with Naruto and Zabuza. Recently, Naruto has decided to start a diary to profile how he feels about his family's newest edition. Dear Diary, when Haku first joined up with me and Zabuza, I was pretty excited. After all, I figured that I could use a sparring partner. Someone who I could train together with and who could make me stronger for when the time came to face my greatest challenge, the Mizukage. However, it became increasingly obvious to me only a week after I met him, that Haku wanted something different entirely. It all started when I asked Haku to spar with me, and he politely turned down my request, only to somehow convince Zabuza to fight with him 3 minutes later. I just trained on my own while Haku demonstrated how powerful his bloodline was to his new sensei. In an entirely unrelated story, Haku became Zabuza's new favorite the next week when he demonstrated that he could perform jutsus with just one hand. I mean, shit, even the goddamn Mizukage can't do that. Nowadays, I just avoid the both of them entirely. Haku's hero worship of Zabuza is bordering on creepy, and I think that the fact that he always wears a kimono and sometimes even makeup when he and Zabuza are going to do something together is wrong. Well, that's all I'm going to write today. The diary entry ends here. After all, writing was never Naruto's forte. Naruto closed his diary and stepped over to his closet, checking his reflection on the way. He was still in his beige pajamas, so he opened up the closet doors and pulled out his ninja outfit. He threw his t-shirt on the bed, a light blue shirt with gold sleeves. Naruto had never been one for stealth, so he chose bright colors for his outfit. On a side note, his shirt seemed to blend in well with water during the daytime, which was great for attacks by sea. Next, he tossed his custom-made cargo shorts next to the shirt. They had all of the bells and whistles that ninja normally kept in their pants, pockets for kunai, shuriken, smoke bombs, and explosive notes. A few minutes later and Naruto stepped out of his room into the living room of the apartment he, Haku, and Zabuza shared, wearing the shirt, shorts, and a fairly standard pair of ninja sandals. When he opened the door, he was greeted by faces that he'd never seen before. On the couch sat several mist nin. Naruto didn't recognize any of them as the team of Anbu that Zabuza led. There were a few rain nin as well, who were playing cards on the dining room table. Did all of these guys sneak in last night? Naruto wondered. Naruto walked to the center of the room and grabbed his forehead protector off of the counter. It was attached to a bandana, but Naruto tied it around his neck, cowboy style. It gave him the appearance of a bandit or criminal, but Naruto liked to give that impression to people. Just as he finished tying on his forehead protector, Naruto felt a tap on his shoulder, so he turned to his right and saw double. There were two identical twin mist nin wearing masks and sharing a chair. They were chained together by the wrist for some reason. "What do you want?" Naruto said. Naruto couldn't tell which one was speaking. They both had their faces covered. "Where's Zabuza? We want to discuss this plan of his before anyone figures out that we're gathered here." Just when Naruto was about to reply, Zabuza and Haku stepped through the door in front of him. Zabuza nodded at Haku and the boy promptly stepped over to Naruto. "Come on, Naruto, we have shopping to do." Haku dragged Naruto out of the room by his arm before he could protest. Seconds later, Naruto and Haku were walking through the street, each carrying their own shopping list. Naruto's list called for lots and lots of kunai and shurikens, explosive notes, and other ninja tools. Why can't Zabuza shop for his own tools? Naruto mumbled to himself. "Don't be that way, Naruto-kun." Haku revealed an envelope. "Look, he even gave us money to buy all of those tools with." Haku raised the container so that Naruto could see it more clearly. "There's enough so we can get some ramen after we're done." Naruto grunted. "I don't need his money. I can afford ramen on my own." "What's wrong with Zabuza-san's money? It looks the same as normal Ryu to me." Naruto changed the subject. "What's the deal with Zabuza sending us out anyway? We didn't even get to hear about this so-called plan of his." Haku laughed. "You mean that you didn't get to hear about his plan? I already know all of the details. He told me about it last week after I finished learning how to make mist out of thin air. By the way, what jutsu did you learn last week? It doesn't matter." Haku's laughter continued. "Don't tell me that you didn't learn one." Naruto reached for the handle of his sword. "Shut up, before I." Haku cut him off. "I understand if you're a little aggravated that Zabuza doesn't trust you enough to let you in on his recent plans, but taking it out on me with those idle threats of yours is something I won't tolerate." "Idle, huh?" Without warning, Naruto drew his sword and swung it downwards, right through the place where Haku used to be. "That was far too slow, Naruto-kun." Haku had somehow managed to move to Naruto's side in the time it took for him to swing his sword. Haku leaned up to Naruto's ear. "Still, what would you have done if that had hit me?" Naruto threw a backhand towards Haku, which was narrowly avoided. He then sheathed his sword. "You would know, if I had meant to hit you." Haku finished his backflip, dodge and jumped up into a tree. "You're a bit too hot-blooded for me to hang around with today. I think I'll gather my share of the supplies somewhere else." Haku started forming hand seals with just his left hand. "Since you're so insistent on not taking Zabuza's money, you can use your own to pick up everything on your list." A large mirror made completely of ice appeared behind Haku, and he melted into it. "I hate that gay bastard," Naruto said to himself, once Haku finished showing off. "If he wasn't Zabuza's favorite, I wouldn't have slowed down my sword." Naruto unclenched his fists and continued walking down the street to fetch the first item on his list, kunai. It wasn't until Naruto had been walking for 5 minutes that he noticed something strange about Kirigakure's market that day. "Where's everyone? I haven't seen anyone but Haku since I left him back there." Naruto stopped walking and looked around. Today was surprisingly bright and sunny in a place that was used to rain. You would expect there to be tons of people to be walking around, taking advantage of this rare opportunity to view the village without having to support an umbrella. Once Naruto stopped moving, a faint aura began to fight its way into his nose. "That smell, it's almost like BL." Naruto cut his statement short when he heard the whizzing of several projectiles coming his way. He jumped backwards while simultaneously drawing his sword. He watched as several ivory-white round objects slammed into the wall to the left and front of him. Naruto reached out and tugged on one, still holding his sword with his right hand. The object refused to leave the wall. "This looks like a bone, but it's shaped like a tiny senbon. Did a ninja throw these at me?" Naruto was just about to investigate the bones further when he felt the wall begin to crumble. Naruto jumped backwards again, this time away from the wall. A forest of these bones burst from the wall, coming this close to Naruto's forehead. Naruto hadn't even come to a complete stop when he was forced to jump backwards again, this time avoiding ivory spikes that came out of the ground. Naruto finished his back flip and landed with his sword facing towards the bony forest in front of him. Naruto watched as the bone closest to him slowly began to morph, becoming more and more like a body. Naruto's first urge was to slice the thing in half, but he waited for it to finish whatever it was trying to do. A face appeared and then separated itself from the bone along with the body. Look what I found all the way out here. A ninja. Naruto resisted the urge to shudder. Who the hell are you? The man finished separating himself from the bone, then he pulled it out of the ground. It fashioned itself into a sword of sorts. Me? I'm no one special. Suddenly, a second bone burst from the guy's left arm. He used it as a second sword, holding the bones like you would two katanas. Naruto gripped his sword even tighter. They're just bones. I can cut through them with this. The guy just laughed. I see what you're thinking, but you can't cut through these with a steel sword, even one as large as that. I can control the density of these bones with my chakra. They're as hard as diamonds. Naruto threw several shuriken at his opponent, which were easily knocked aside. While his enemy was distracted, Naruto moved to his side. Naruto's sword came down, but the guy seemed faster than him. He blocked it with his two bones, katanas, and then pulled them together in scissor-like fashion, cutting Naruto's sword in half. He smirked, so naive. The guy finished Naruto off with a 4-hit combo, but just when he was about to congratulate himself, he felt sharp pain rush up his spine. He looked down and could only watch in horror as Naruto's sword came out of his chest. He looked up and saw the Naruto that he had just finished off burst into water. A water clone. Now, Naruto started. He was now standing behind the guy, holding his sword so that it was submerged in his enemy's back, with only the tip poking through the other side. You're going to tell me who the hell you are, what you did with everyone around here, and how you make your bones do that. The guy spat out blood. I'm disgusted. You missed Nin forget so quickly who it was who supported this country during the Great War. The Kagaya clan was Water Country's strength. You could even say that we were its skeleton. Kagaya clan? Naruto repeated. That's right. I'm a member of the legendary clan that can use its own bones as weapons. We were invincible in our prime, but the Mizukage threw us aside as soon as the war ended. Fortunately, we always kept the vast majority of our numbers underground, so those Anbu the Cage sent only killed a small percentage of us. Naruto nodded in understanding. I see, your bone molding ability is a bloodline limit, like Haku's. You were supposed to be exterminated years ago. The Kagaya laughed. But we weren't. And now we're back, and we're going to burn this village to the ground. Starting with you. Naruto stabbed his sword into the Kagaya, execution style, before leaping out of the way of more ivory bullets. Shit, more of these guys. 3 Kagaya, 2 male and 1 female, landed in front of Naruto with bone katana in their hands. Good job killing one of us, the female spoke, the other 2 assumed a battle stance. But now that you know we're here, we can't let you escape. Bones, bones, and more bones. All around Naruto, there was nothing but bones. To his left, to his right, behind him, in front of him. Even above and below Naruto there was bones. Naruto had his hand on the hilt of the sword strapped to his back. He was in a proverbial jungle of bones, a place his 3 Kagaya opponents had created in only a minute of fighting. Considering what Naruto's first Kagaya opponent came out of when they met 5 minutes earlier, this was definitely not a good place to be. Look at the little runt. A voice called out from somewhere in the jungle. He's scared stiff. Let's put him out of his misery. Naruto heard several popping noises, before he ducked a bone sword that someone had thrown at him. He was forced to block a second sword that came from his right and was swung at him downwards. Normally, he would have rolled to the side, kicked his foe down, and beheaded them, but all of these bones made it hard to maneuver. Instead, Naruto parried the sword and tried to cut down his assailant. Whoever it was, could have been any of the 3 Kaguyas that he was fighting, escaped back into the jungle, easily avoiding Naruto's blade. This isn't working, Naruto realized. I'll never be able to beat them in here. Naruto sidestepped several finger bullets and then raised his sword above his head. What's he trying to do? One of the Kagaya said. None of us are within his sword's reach. Maybe it was the female Kagaya this time. He's thinking of clearing away some of those bones. The 3rd Kagaya finished this 3-sided conversation. He'll never be able to cut through them with that sword of his. It's quite large, but it looks poorly constructed. It will probably shatter on impact. Naruto whirled his weapon around in a huge arc, leveling all the bones that were directly around him. Then he leapt up into the air and landed on a building. He quickly dashed away from the Kagayas. The female drew out one of her ribs and made a short sword out of it. That sword he's using isn't normal. she concluded. Could it be one of the 7? The 2 males shrugged, and all 3 chased after Naruto. Naruto jumped from building to building, trying to stay ahead of his foes. He felt the ground shake, and instinctively dodged the spikes that rose from the ground by jumping to the side. He landed in the street and kept running. Once again, the street felt surprisingly lonely on such a sunny day. The smell of blood once again reached Naruto's nose. Where are the Anbu? Aren't they supposed to be in charge of keeping out intruders? Naruto leapt onto another building and over an array of bones that burst from the ground. He stopped running when another Kagaya burst through the roof of the building and swung his sword at him. Naruto leapt back, but was too slow. The Kaguya's blade left a deep gash right above the knee. The other 3 Kagaya landed to the left, right, and back of Naruto respectively. Trapped like a rat, one of the Kagaya snickered. He drew out his finger bones, fastening them into kunai. Naruto's eyes darted around. Another one? These guys keep coming. The Kagaya to the left of Naruto shot his finger bullets at him. Naruto rotated his sword, windmill style, and deflected them. The Kagaya behind Naruto struck next, but her sword was bounced to the side by an impressive parry by Naruto. His sword still in the air after the parry, Naruto had to use a kunai to stop the bony versions of the same weapon that were thrown from overhead. Too bad that left him completely vulnerable to the Kagaya in front, who had decided to rush forward with his sword aimed at Naruto's chest. Just before Naruto was impaled, a hail of senbon rained from overhead, pinning the Kagaya to the ground. Naruto took this opportunity to cut down the Kagaya he had already parried. Then he stabbed the one on the ground downwards. Naruto's rescuer landed behind him. "What are you doing here, Haku?" Naruto asked. The effeminate boy made a small gesture with the senbon in his hands. "I finished buying senbon and was passing through this area when I saw you on the roof in desperate need of help. What kind of friend would I be if let these guys kill you?" Naruto aimed his sword towards one of the Kagaya. "I didn't need any help. I was just about to cut the guy in half. Whatever you need to tell yourself, Naruto-kun." Haku moved all of his senbon into his right hand, leaving his left one ready for his famous one-handed jutsus. Naruto snickered. "Why can't you just do them with both hands like a normal guy?" "Because I'm not a normal guy." Haku started his hand seals, which Naruto recognized as a combination for a high-level ice jutsu. Naruto felt a deep rumbling in the ground, signifying the arrival of another Kagaya. There's no end to these guys, Naruto thought. He grabbed Haku and told him, "No time for you fancy jutsus, we have to go." Naruto pulled Haku with him, and both jumped off of the roof as a forest of bones sprouted where they were standing. Naruto and Haku landed in the street, and Haku pointed towards the center of town. "Let's go that way, Naruto-kun. That's where Zabuza wants us to meet him." Naruto nodded and followed Haku. Along the way the two of them dodged forest after forest of bones that sprung up whenever another Kagaya surfaced. The wound in Naruto's leg started burning after all of this dodging, and he was feeling more than a little sluggish. "I hope we get to wherever Zabuza is pretty soon. I can't take much more of this." Naruto forced himself to keep running, resisting the urge to take a break. Haku noticed the red spot on the cargo shorts that Naruto was wearing. "They managed to wound you?" Naruto didn't need to answer, the blood running down his pants was evidence enough. Minutes of running later, and Naruto was finally greeted by the sight he had been waiting to see. All of the village's ninja were gathered around the Mizukage's tower, pushing back the army of Kagaya that were assaulting the village. This explained why there was no one guarding any of the other sectors in the village. However, it also raised some questions. So this is where our ninja were, but why are all of them this close to the cage's tower? And why aren't the Anbu among them? Were among the questions that Naruto asked himself. Naruto looked over to Haku for some answers, and was greeted by the other boy's queer, "I know more than I'm willing to tell you," smile. Naruto shrugged, and the two of them kept going. Haku and Naruto cut through the ninja, moving past the tower and towards the residential district. Fortunately, the Kagaya got caught up in the fighting, so the bone forest stopped chasing them at this point. A short jog later, and Haku and Naruto were at the doorstep of a house with no numbers on the front door. Naruto stepped aside and let Haku knock on the door. A slider was opened and a pair of eyes greeted Haku. "Haku." They turned towards Naruto, and "Naruto, we've been waiting for you. Come inside." The door was opened, revealing that this building was filled with all of the people who were in Zabuza's house that morning, plus the entire Anbu squad. Naruto stepped inside the house, and saw that Zabuza was sitting in a chair to his left, with a detailed map of the Mizukage's tower on the table in front of him. He seemed to be discussing strategy with some of the other people present. Two of the guys he was talking to were those strange, masked twins from this morning who were chained together at the wrist. "Are you sure that you won't need some additional help, Zabuza-san? This is the Mizukage we're talking about." Zabuza was offended by the statement. "I know what I'm doing. The Mizukage is nothing but a weakling who got into his position by stabbing us all in the back. Anyone could have seen that he would make a poor Kage. That's why the previous one turned down his nomination. Then the slimy bastard killed our real Kage so he could steal the position. I'm going to prove to the whole village that this man is weak, and I'll do that by myself. I won't need any help taking him down." Naruto stomped over to Zabuza and tapped him on the shoulder. In his rage he let himself slip, and his eyes assumed the fox squint that he had trained himself not to do. "Zabuza-sensei, what the hell's going on here? Why was I attacked by Kagaya after you sent me out to fetch you some kunai? And what's all this have to do with this plan of yours?" "Everything, Naruto, everything." That answer knocked the rage right out of Naruto. He scratched his head. "What? Look closely at these blueprints." Zabuza turned them so that Naruto could see them more clearly. "This is the Mizukage's tower. The building is surrounded completely in water. The only entrance is the drawbridge in the front, and it is only lowered when the Mizukage releases his personal militia from the tower, to deal with large-scale riots and ninja attacks." "The Mizukage has a personal militia?" "Yes, it's composed of the strongest ninja in the village that are not associated with Anbu. A ninja force strong enough to even give me problems if I had to fight them directly. They make assassinating the Mizukage especially difficult. So that's what this is about." Naruto thought. "Assassinating the Mizukage. I orchestrated this Kagaya attack so that the tower would be opened, and my army here," Zabuza gestured at all of the ninja and Anbu he had gathered in the room, "could get into the open tower and kill the Kage." Naruto moved his hands into thinking position, and absorbed all of this information. "You made those Kagaya attack me this morning?" "Not exactly. They weren't supposed to attack until night, which is why I've called this emergency meeting in this safe house. Now, we'll have to attack during the day, and that means several parts of the plan must be changed. Much of our advantage will be lost since the Kage will be able to see us approach the tower. In addition, it will be troublesome getting around his militia in broad daylight." "Exactly, Zabuza, that is why we should call off the attack for now. Attacking the Mizukage on a day like this is suicide." A female Anbu near the back of the room made this statement. Zabuza stood up. "Shut up, I make the decisions here." He walked over to the window. Outside, the fighting in front of the tower was visible. The Kagaya had fought valiantly up to this point, but the militia was dug in too well. They had stopped all of the Kaguya's momentum. It wouldn't be long before they started pushing them back. "Naruto, come here." Naruto stepped over and peered out the window as well. "We have until the last Kagaya is defeated to kill the Mizukage. Once they are all gone, those ninja will turn all of their attention on us, and we will be slaughtered." Zabuza turned to Naruto. "I didn't tell you about this plan because you excite too easily when something this big is approaching, and I need you calm and collected for what we are about to do. Even with those Kagaya over there, someone is still going to have to keep the Kage's ninja from running back in there when I slit his throat. That someone is you. I'm not going to be in there fighting the Kage as well?" That was the original plan, but Zabuza patted Naruto on the head. "Those Kagaya screwed everything up. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, but attacking like this in plain daylight was foolish. They're all going to die, possibly even faster than if they'd listened to me and struck at night, and that means that I'll need extra soldiers to pick up the slack. If I can't handle the Kage, I'll call for you." Zabuza looked up at the rest of the ninja in the room. "Until then, it's your job to keep that militia out of the tower." Zabuza, Naruto, Haku, and a small army's worth of Anbu, Rain Nin, and missing Nin from the Mist Village, left the building where they had previously been and rushed out into the front of the Mizukage's tower. A member of the Mizukage's personal militia looked towards the approaching army right after slitting the throat of yet another Kagaya. Who the hell are those guys? And why is Zabuza with them? Zabuza put on his Anbu mask, and Haku revealed that he had one of his own. Naruto raised his arm up in protest, but Haku just stuffed another Anbu mask in his hand. Naruto looked at his mask. It was shaped like a penguin of all things. What the hell is this? Zabuza-san says that Anbu masks improve the focus of the one who wears them, making them perfect for any assassination. That's not what I meant, Haku. Naruto said before putting on his admittingly embarrassing mask. Zabuza nodded at Haku and Naruto, and suddenly the whole makeshift army rushed right into the Mizukage's militia. Naruto pushed past ninja after ninja, shoving most of them aside. He only drew his sword to cut down the few that realized that it was strange that ninja from the hidden village of the mist were moving away from the people who were attacking it. Naruto, and the rest of Zabuza's army, broke through the other side of the militia, but not all of their number had made it. As much as a third of the army was missing, probably stuck somewhere inside the battle between the Mist Village and the Kagaya clan. Zabuza walked up to the entrance of the tower. This is where we part ways, Naruto and Haku. Don't let anyone through here. Naruto nodded and drew his sword, pointing at the cage's militia. Haku drew out some senbon. Is your wound okay, Naruto-kun? Naruto tapped his leg, where a nasty gash had been made by those Kagaya earlier. You know that I heal fast, Haku. My leg's as good as new. The rest of Zabuza's army followed Haku and Naruto, drawing out their weapons and pointing them towards their enemy. It was at this point that some of the militiamen realized what was going on. One of them turned to this buddy. Those ninja back there are pointing their weapons at us, and look, most of them are wearing rain headbands. Several of the cage's soldiers turned around. Seems these guys are making war against our village as well. One of them said. He pulled out a single kunai. We might as well take them out. Those Kagaya will never get this close to the tower anyway. Naruto tightened his grip on his sword. Go ahead and try. Meanwhile, Zabuza stepped inside the cage's throne room, where the Mizukage himself and two ninja lied in wait. The Mizukage smirked. You don't know how long I've waited for this day. Now I finally have an excuse to execute you, but I'm very disappointed that you didn't bring in Naruto as well. I really wanted to show him what would happen to him if he ever crossed me. Zabuza reached up and gripped the hilt of his sword. I didn't bring him because I didn't want Naruto to get nightmares from seeing the bloody mess that I'm going to cut you into. The Mizukage stood up from his throne, drawing out a ninjutsu. His face contorted into that creepy grin of his, eyes squinting until they were no longer visible, his teeth stretching across his face. You must be pretty confident in yourself, Zabuza-kun, making threats like that. He nodded at the ninja beside him. Take care of this pest. Suddenly Zabuza was surrounded. Both of the ninja that had been beside the cage just seconds before were now standing beside Zabuza with their kunai drawn. The ninja to the left of Zabuza even had a jutsu ready, his kunai spewing electricity into the air. The other ninja, the one holding a non-electrified kunai, taunted Zabuza. Scared, Zabuza? Give up now and we'll give you a painless death. Zabuza began to slowly pull his sword from its sheath. No, only you two will die if you attack me. The ninja holding the electrified kunai spoke next, now. Before he draws his sword. The other ninja rushed forward, closing in right before Zabuza finished pulling his sword out. Zabuza smirked, before pushing his sword all the way back into his sheath and ducking the ninja's kunai stab. Zabuza then seamlessly drew his own kunai and dragged it upwards through his assailant's chest. The ninja stumbled backwards, and then fell to the floor. Zabuza formed one half of the hand seal for the ram and held it right in front of his mask. Aren't you going to attack me as well? He said to the remaining ninja. The second ninja didn't waste any time getting behind Zabuza, then he tried to cut the Anbu captain's back open with his electrified kunai. Just before his blade made contact, Zabuza disappeared. The ninja reared backwards, assuming a defensive stance with his electric kunai pointed upwards. He looked around for Zabuza, but could find no sign of him in the throne room. How could he just disappear like that? Did he make himself invisible? He turned around, facing the Mizukage. He was about to ask the cage for advice, but stopped when he heard a whooshing noise to his left. The ninja threw his kunai as he turned to his left, expecting to see Zabuza just as he was hit with the projectile. However, as he was turning, he felt his arms and neck being snatched up into a headlock. He tried to break free, and in the process of that he realized who it was that was holding him. When did Zabuza get behind me? And if he's behind me, then who did I throw a kunai at? The ninja turned his head forward, and saw his kunai bounce off of Zabuza's sword, which was quickly spinning towards him. He looked up at Zabuza, desperation etched on his face. How did you? Zabuza didn't have enough time to answer. He pushed the ninja forward and then disappeared, grabbing the hilt of his blade as it pierced his enemy's chest. He pulled it out, wiped it off with a rag, and then resheathed it. The Mizukage clapped. Very good, Zabuza-kun. I didn't know that you could control your sword in midair with your chakra. The cage took his ninjutsu out of its sheath. Still, I didn't expect you to be able to defeat two special Junin so quickly. I came here to kill you. What made you think those two grunts would even slow me down? The Mizukage removed his sheath from his hip, and moved it onto his back. Then he sheathed his sword, and grabbed its hilt with his right hand. He placed his other hand in front his face, with his fingers forming half of the ram hand seal. Very well. I see that I will have to deal with you personally. From now on, this fight is one-on-one. Zabuza would have raised an eyebrow, if he had any. That stands. When did you learn silent killing techniques? The Mizukage tensed up for a second before disappearing. That's the same move I used to kill his second henchman. Zabuza closed his eyes, listening for any clue his enemy's location. But I know its weakness. Zabuza blocked several kunai that were thrown from behind him, then he turned around, already expecting his opponent's attack to be from that direction. Sure enough, the cage materialized in front of Zabuza, with his ninjutsu out in front of him. Zabuza swung his sword, expecting to cut the Mizukage in half, but he just disappeared again. Zabuza felt his arm be pulled into a rough shoulder lock, then he watched as the cage lowered his ninjutsu until it was only inches from his neck. You're too slow, Zabuza-kun. The cage declared. Even if you predict how I'm going to attack, it won't help if I just avoid the counterattack. Zabuza smirked. What counterattack? That was merely a feint. Zabuza disappeared the second he finished that sentence. The Mizukage's eyes widened. Where did he go? And why do my arms feel like they're? This is when he realized that him and Zabuza had switched places. Now he was in an arm lock, and Zabuza was holding his cleaver to the cage's throat. The Mizukage stared at Zabuza's sword, which was hovering an inch from his neck. I see. Zabuza-kun was just pretending to attack me, so I would run around behind him and put him in this lock. He must have been preparing this kawamiri while I did that, so he could switch places with me. This is it for you, Kito. It's been nice knowing you. Zabuza slowly moved his weapon up against the cage's throat, preparing to execute him. Now for a little backstory on silent killing techniques. Silent killing techniques are the ancient combat style that all ninja employed prior to the discovery of chakra. Back then, ninja prided themselves on their ability to stay completely hidden, even when they were slaying their opponents. A ninja's worth was only as great as the number of people he could kill simultaneously before being discovered. The standing record for consecutive silent kills is held by none other than Zabuza, for his slaying of over 100 academy students at the Mist Ninja Academy, before he even became a ninja himself. Silent killing techniques emphasize a combination of speed and invisibility that most people no longer value, with the existence of genjutsu allowing a ninja to simply convince their victim that nothing is happening while they slit their throats. However, there is around 50 different ways to break most genjutsu that even a non-ninja can use. Silent killing techniques cannot be defeated so easily. The silent killing technique that Zabuza and the Mizukage both employed in this chapter has a simple name, Kage. That's shadow for all of you who haven't actually watched Naruto. The user moves at a speed so fast that their opponent cannot see them, while silencing their footsteps at the same time. He or she uses the short amount of time that this technique actually lasts to get behind their opponent. Once there, they follow the opponent's back and stay in their blind spot until they see an opportunity to finish them off. If used by a true master, This technique is a guaranteed finisher on any opponent as long as they are slower than you are and don't have eyes in the back of their head or anything like that. Well, that's all I have to say about that. Let's check back in with Naruto. Outside of the Mizukage's tower, Naruto, Haku, and the rest of Zabuza's army were all fighting side by side, doing their best to keep their enemy from getting past them and going into the tower to support the Mizukage. At their feet lied the two ninja who first noticed that they were against the Mizukage, along with several others, but that was only the tip of the iceberg as far as their enemy was concerned. It looked like as many as 100 soldiers were standing in front of them, to their 20, and the only reason that they hadn't assaulted Zabuza's team was because they were so preoccupied with the Kagaya at the moment. It was at this point that Naruto began to rap an explosive note around one of his kunai, a scowl covering his face. We've been standing here, staring at their backs for almost 10 minutes. You'd think at least a couple more would notice that we are here. Naruto vigorously rapped kunai after kunai and explosives. He obviously planned to do something spectacular, but stopped when he felt his arm being grabbed. Naruto looked to his right at Haku, who was holding his forearm so he couldn't continue to rap his kunai. Naruto had an expression on his face that seemed to be saying, "What's the big deal? What are you about to do, Naruto-kun?" Naruto snatched his arm out of Haku's grasp. Ever since we beat up those guys, he gestured towards the small pile of ninja that they had already defeated. We've just been standing here watching those guys fight the Kagaya. None of them have noticed us. Do they think that we're weak? Weaker than those Kagaya that are holding all of their attention? Haku scratched his head, as if he was thinking hard. But isn't that a good thing, Naruto-kun? The longer until they notice us, the more they'll tire themselves out fighting the Kagaya, and the more time we'll have to rest. Don't be in such a rush, Naruto. When those ninja figure out that we're here, they could kill us. Naruto laughed, as if those guys could beat me. I'm Naruto, one of the swordsmen of the mist and the successor to Zabuza's special killing techniques. Haku sighed, hiding his face with one hand. That's silent killing techniques, Naruto-kun. He thought to himself, I could never lose to guys like these. Suddenly, the whole back row of the Mizukage's army turned around. Each and every one was wearing an expression that would cause babies and small children to cry. The same thought was flowing through each and every one of their brains. How could we let someone that loud get behind us? There was at least 20 ninja in that group, and most of them were using umbrellas, as opposed to the kunai that the ninja that Naruto's team beat had used. They all stepped forward and matched Naruto and the others' line formation, pulling out their umbrellas. It looked like this fight was going to be one-on-one, with every single one of the ninja on Zabuza's side going up against a single ninja on the cages. Haku pulled out more senbon. Naruto Yubaka. He cursed almost silently. It might have been an hour before they noticed us. Now I might get blood on my kimono. Naruto gripped the sword that was strapped to his back. Don't be a pushover, Haku. Come on, this is the perfect time to show off those one-handed jutsus you always brag about. Haku turned his face towards Naruto, and after deliberating with himself briefly, nodded. Very well. I was getting tired of standing here as well. Killing one of these guys should help pass the time until Zabuza finishes off the Mizukage. The ninja that was standing across from Haku started laughing. Zabuza? Finishing off the Mizukage? The guy laughed even harder. That could never happen, not even in a million years. Naruto's expression grew darker. What do you mean by that? Of course Zabuza will beat him. The Mizukage doesn't stand a chance. The ninja was rolling on the ground now, clutching his sides. You're too funny, kid. Using a handspring he jumped back onto his feet. I'll tell you what, kid, I'm going to do you a little favor. Favor? I don't need any favors from you. No, you're going to like this one. The guy caught himself, forcing himself to stop laughing. After I kill your little girlfriend over here. A blood vessel almost burst in Haku's skull. Girl. How could he mistake me for a girl? This is a male kimono, embroidered with blue flowers and goldfish. Haku crossed his arms and HMPHED. The guy paused. She just HMPHED. What was that for? Oh, I get it. She's just pissed because I called her that guy's girlfriend and she really isn't. Whatever. He started again. After I kill that girl over there, I'm going to kill you, too. That way you won't have to see Zabuza's bloody carcass after the Mizukage rips him apart. Back in the cage's throne room. This is it for you, Kito. It's been nice knowing you. Zabuza slit the Mizukage's throat, dragging his huge cleaver all the way across it, ensuring that there was no way that Kito could survive. The Mizukage's body tumbled to the ground, slamming into it with a resounding thump. Zabuza was just about to turn around and leave, when he saw the one thing that he hadn't been expecting. The cage's body turned into water and melted into the ground. Zabuza's eyes shot wide open. Shit, where the hell did he go? Zabuza whipped his sword out of its sheath, standing in the center of the throne room, straining every one of his senses to the maximum, trying to figure out where the cage went to. I'm right over here, Zabuza-kun. Zabuza turned towards the voice, only to find that the cage had been sitting in his chair the whole time. What the? The cage grinned. Isn't it obvious? When I disappeared, I just went behind this chair and made a water clone for you to fight. He began to wag his finger back and forth. I wanted to see what kind of skills you are planning to beat me with. That's not what I mean. Zabuza growled. You used the water clone jutsu. What I want to know is how. How could you make a water clone if there's no water in here? The Mizukage's grin grew even wider. That isn't true at all, Zabuza-kun. Huh? That was the only thing that Zabuza had to say to that? There's all the water that I could ever ask for in here. Tell me, Zabuza-kun, have you ever noticed how beautiful the walls in this tower are? Huh? Zabuza repeated the same answer that he gave to the cage's previous statement. That's because they aren't made out of any kind of stone or marble that anyone besides me could ever produce. The way that the walls shimmer, the fact that they're so smooth, this isn't something that you'll find in the towers of any cage besides me. Do you know why that is? Of course not. It's my ability, Zabuza-kun. All cage need one, a trick they can do that no one else can reproduce. I've heard that the Hokage can summon a monkey, for example. I also heard that his predecessor could grow trees with his chakra. The cage slowly moved one of his hands, pointing the palm at Zabuza. Zabuza moved his sword between himself and the cage, hoping that that would protect him from whatever technique his enemy would use. Well, my ability allows me to turn water into solid objects by solidifying it with my chakra. Once my technique is finished, the object stays solid until it is hit with another blast of my chakra. The cage formed the hand seal for the dragon. So, Zabuza-kun, how do you like the walls and floor of my throne room? Aren't they beautiful? Zabuza felt the ground shudder. He looked down and realized, to his extreme horror, that the floor directly behind him was slowly rising upwards. No way. Don't tell me that he made his whole tower out of water. The Mizukage chuckled. I can tell by the expression on your face that you've finally figured out what I've been hinting at. That's right, this entire tower is actually an enormous water supply that only I can use. Water explosion jutsu. Zabuza dodged to the right side, just in time to be hit by a blast of water that came sideways out of the wall to his left. He skidded across the ground like a pebble on a pond, before coming to a stop when he slammed into a wall. At this point, the Mizukage burst into uncontrollable laughter. Zabuza-kun, he screamed between his frenzied laughs. Just because I made the ground shake doesn't mean that I was attacking from it. You should think more before dodging. He continued to laugh, leaning back into his chair until it fell backwards. He wiped the tears from his eyes and looked up, only to see Zabuza looming over him. The cage said, flinching as Zabuza drew his sword. Now it was Zabuza's turn to chuckle. I used the same move that you did. I made a water clone and then moved behind you. Then I waited for you to show me this ability of yours. Zabuza held his sword to the cage's nose. You're probably wondering where I got the water for my jutsu from, aren't you? Not really. You used the water that my clone burst into. Now it was Zabuza's turn to flinch. What? He already knows what I did. Away from me. Water style. Bullet. The cage opened his mouth and spit out a high-speed sphere of water. It completely caught Zabuza off guard, piercing through his chest and bursting him into water. Shit, how many water clones did he make? The Mizukage said. Then he jumped onto his feet, only to see Zabuza's cleaver rushing towards his chest. Just those two, Zabuza said, before doubling his speed. Die, Kito. The cage could only raise his hands in front of his chest, in a desperate attempt to shield himself, as Zabuza's sword pierced through skin, muscle, and bone. Zabuza was looking straight down when he made that stab, his eyes refusing to look when he dealt the finishing blow. He drew his mouth into a weak smile. Sorry, Kito, but I couldn't let you go on living after what you've done. No matter what kind of friendship we had before you did it. Zabuza tried to tug his sword back out of the cage's body, but to his surprise it seemed to be stuck. He looked up, and saw that hands were gripping his sword. Zabuza smirked. Kito, you're difficult to the end. Very well, I guess I'll have to sever your neck to kill you. He gave his sword a deeper tug before looking up to face the man he stabbed. What Zabuza saw was confusing. A smile? Why are you smiling? There was a slight pause before the answer came. Because I've waited so long to meet you, Zabuza-san. Zabuza finished looking up and realized that the person on the end of his sword wasn't Kito, it was someone different entirely. The name's Hitode. My father has ordered me to defeat you, Zabuza-san. Zabuza looked up into the orange eyes of the person who said this, and realized that this was going to be an entirely different fight than before. I've pushed my sword halfway through this guy's chest, but he's still able to keep me from pulling it out with just the strength of his arms. What is this guy? Zabuza gave his sword another tug, but it still wouldn't remove itself from the chest of his new foe. Good luck doing that, kid. Zabuza said as he continued to pull on his sword. You're going to need it. Meanwhile, Naruto, Haku, one female Anbu, and those strange twins that were changed at the wrist were the only members of Zabuza's team left. They had barely managed to defeat the back row of the Mizukage's army, which was made up of around 20 soldiers, however that only caused more troops to break off from the mass in front of them in order to engage them. Now it was the 5 of them against 20 enemies who were, in comparison, quite fresh since they had barely seen any action from the Kagaya up ahead. To make matters even worse, the lack of the appearance of any more bony forests signified that the number of Kagaya had decreased dramatically. This battle was almost over, and if Zabuza didn't take out the cage before it ended, him, Naruto and all the others were dead. One of the guys who had turned to face Naruto and friends stood out from the rest. His face was badly scarred, he wore a trenchcoat, and an array of umbrellas were strapped to his back. He pulled one out and pointed it right at Naruto. It's quite impressive that you 5 took out so many of us, but it looks like you are on your last legs. His eyes followed Naruto as he stumbled sideways, trying to keep his balance even though he was on the verge of falling. I guess that I'll finish you off now. He hurled the umbrella at Naruto, smiling as the projectile spiraled closer and closer to its mark. Suddenly, Haku appeared between the umbrella and its target, using his famous ice mirror teleportation trick, and grabbed it by the handle. I won't let you hurt Naruto. Even if he was too stupid to conserve his energy during this battle. Really now? The umbrella guy made a gesture towards the umbrella with his hand. Open. The umbrella shot open, despite being in Haku's hand, and somehow released hundreds of senbon towards Naruto. Haku did his one-handed seals again, and teleported a second time. However, this time there was no umbrella to grab. The senbon slammed into Haku as he used his body as a shield for Naruto, somehow sending him flying right into the person he was trying to protect. Naruto couldn't move his body, but he was still able to turn his head towards the boy who saved him. Haku, you saved me. There was no answer from the effeminate boy. Haku, say something. Why did you save me? Naruto said. He can't answer you, kid. That guy's dead. He pulled out a second umbrella. And soon you'll be, too. Naruto's eyes opened in shock. Haku, dead? It can't be. It can't be. New strength found its way into Naruto's body. It can't be. Naruto jumped onto his feet, landing on all fours. The other boy stared closely at Naruto's new look. His eyes turned red. That's strange. That's a neat trick, making your body turn red like that. But I'm going to end this now. Naruto's body started shaking violently as what appeared to be fire started to twist around him. Naruto started mumbling to himself, kill, 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 kill. Naruto ran towards the umbrella guy at this point, continuing his insane chanting. Kill, kill, what's up with this kid? The guy thought. First he turns red, and now I think his voice just dropped several decibels. Did he just hit puberty or something? Naruto jumped into the air, his hand stretched out towards his enemy, and the nails on his fingers made it look like he had claws. Kill, kill, I'm going to kill you. The umbrella guy jumped backwards, avoiding Naruto's claw swipe. Then he hurled his umbrella into the boy's chest. It exploded, throwing fire, dirt, and Naruto into the air. The umbrella dude watched Naruto rise upwards into the sky with a smile on his face, a direct hit. And I put enough explosives in that umbrella to take out a dragon. But just in case he survived, he pulled out his remaining 2 umbrellas and spun them in his hands, assuming a dual weapon stance that was normally reserved for swords. Naruto fell back down into the cloud of smoke that was produced by the explosion. The guy gave Naruto a 30-second grace period, watching the smoke settle and making sure that there was no movement from Naruto. He started to put his umbrellas away when he was satisfied that Naruto was dead. Guess he didn't survive after all. I expected a little more than this when I saw him release all of that chakra. Oh well. He started to push his first umbrella into one of the holes in his coat where he stored his weapons, but there was a flash of red that pierced through the smoke. The umbrella guy swung his umbrellas in front of him so that they formed an X that protected his face. He was just in time, since Naruto's fist shot out of the smoke a mere second later, breaking both umbrellas as if they were twigs. At the very last second, just as Naruto's claw began to scratch his cheek, the umbrella guy moved his head to the side, and he kicked Naruto in the chest to knock him backwards. He looked at the 2 broken umbrella poles in his hand, and threw them to the side. So, seeing that guy die gets you this angry, huh? Well then, I guess I should let you in on a little secret. Meanwhile, it was at this point that the remaining members of Zabuza's army finished off their latest batch of enemies. There were 4 left, if you counted the deceased Haku, but only 3 if you didn't. There were those twins that Zabuza kept around. He just called them the Demon Brothers since trying not to get their names mixed up when they looked exactly the same was way too difficult. Then there was that female Anbu who had managed to survive for this long even though she had originally been opposed to attacking the cage during the day. The Demon Brothers were currently standing over the body of the last ninja they killed. He was wrapped completely in barbed wire, and had died from blood loss due to the countless cuts on his body produced by the aforementioned wire. One of the brothers, let's just refer to him as the first brother, pressed a switch on the metal glove that he was wearing, detaching it from the barbed wire. I expected Haku to handle most of these opponents, not us. He said to his brother. The second brother began the tedious work of entangling the wire from the body it was wrapped around, so that he could roll it back into his glove. He started by rolling the body across the ground with his foot. Yes, it is too bad that Haku is dead. We used our weapon so much that the wire almost broke. Reattaching this will be so troublesome. He tried to pull the wire free from the body, but it seemed to be caught on something, probably a bone. Go check Haku's body for kunai, I'm going to have to cut this free. He continued tugging as his brother approached Haku's body. The first brother walked up to Haku, who was still covered in senbon. The needles had actually hit him in a way that stuck him to a wall, so the demon brother started by removing some of them so that he could stretch Haku out on the ground. He began searching the kid for a kunai holster, but stopped when he felt some blood hit him in the face. He jumped backwards when Haku coughed again, spraying more blood. "Hey brother, I got the chain free. It was just stuck in the guy's shirt." The second brother yelled from the distance. He walked over to his brother, pausing when he saw him jump away from Haku's body. "What's wrong, brother?" he said. "He's not dead," the first brother declared, still watching Haku's body. "Who are you talking about?" The second brother followed the direction that his brother's eyes were looking in. "Haku's not dead? What makes you say that? He just coughed blood on me. Dead people can't do that." The second brother walked up to Haku and prodded him with his foot. Haku coughed again, getting blood on the second brother's shoe. I see why Zabuza talks so highly of this kid. There's few people who could avoid a critical wound when hit by this many senbon." He took his foot off of Haku's chest. "Brother, go fetch that medic nin that Zabuza sent with us. You know, the one with blue hair." The first brother nodded, before running off to find the remaining member of Zabuza's team. He found her a good ways away, nursing a shoulder wound with the dead bodies of 3 enemy ninja around her. 30 seconds later, the two brothers were standing beside Haku's body as the Anbu crouched beside him and started investigating it. She started by lifting up his arm and checking his pulse. "Well, I'll be damned," she said. "He has a pulse, but it is very weak." She opened up Haku's kimono and plucked a couple of the senbon, paying special attention to how deep the holes they made were, and their position in the kid's body. None of his organs were hit, and the wounds aren't deep enough to be fatal. It's surprising that Haku was hurt this bad by needles like this, unless. She molded chakra around her fingers, causing them to glow a light green color. She pressed one of her fingers against one of the senbon. Her chakra changed color, turning from green to purple. "Poison," she muttered, further away from the tower. Naruto rushed the umbrella guy again, aiming for his face and throwing a violent punch. The guy rolled to the side, barely avoiding the attack. "Hold your horses there, buddy. I told you that I have a secret to tell you." Naruto landed on the ground and spun around. He prepared to attack again, baring his fangs. The umbrella guy reached into his pocket and whipped out a green vial. "Your friend's not dead yet." Naruto stopped mid-dash, stopping himself by digging his claws into the ground. The umbrella guy waved the vial side to side, making sure that Naruto was paying attention. "When I said he was, I meant that he was as good as dead since he took a hit from my senbon. I coated them in a special poison that only my family makes. It is very slow acting, taking as much as an hour to kill its victim if they only receive the standard dose. This vial in my hand's the only antidote." The guy looked into his hand where he had been holding the vial, and quickly realized that it was gone. He looked behind him to see that Naruto had somehow snatched the vial from him while he was talking and was now running towards Haku. "Kuso," the guy mentally cursed. He pulled out a kunai, his last weapon, and ran after Naruto. Naruto made his way towards Haku, the demon brothers, and that Anbu woman, with the umbrella guy right on his tail. He threw the vial towards the Anbu, shouting, "This vial has the antidote in it. Give it to Haku." The umbrella guy threw his kunai, hoping to intercept the vial in midair. The demon brothers were all poised to catch the vial, but then they saw a kunai being hurled towards it. The first brother spoke, "Let's go, brother." The two brothers attached their gloves together using a bladed chain. Then the second brother grabbed the other one by the back of the shirt and hurled him towards the vial. The first brother grabbed the vial and bounced the kunai to the side using his metal glove, then he pulled on the chain, throwing his brother past him. The second brother flew over the umbrella guy, who hadn't stopped chasing Naruto even after tossing his last weapon. That was a huge mistake, since it allowed the demon brothers to use their patented tag team move, wrapping the guy up with the bladed chain so that he couldn't move a muscle. The brothers initiated their finishing move with a simple phrase, "Do it." Seconds later and all that was left of the umbrella guy was chunks of meat on the ground. Meanwhile, the female Anbu placed the antidote in a syringe that she produced from absolutely nowhere, and stabbed it into Haku's neck. I hope that guy wasn't lying about this antidote. She squeezed the green liquid into Haku's neck. Once all of it was in, she checked Haku out with a medical scanning jutsu. She let out the breath she had been holding, then she took a last look at the vial before letting it fall onto the ground. Guess this was an antidote after all. Naruto took a seat next to Haku, clutching his chest. He spoke to the other boy despite the fact that he was unconscious. "Damn it, you queer bastard. You had me scared there for a minute. But I knew that. Naruto fell sideways mid-sentence and his eyes widened in pain. His chest felt like it was on fire. The Anbu stepped over to Naruto. She noted the blood that was pooling under his body. "You don't look much better than Haku," she said, "but great work getting that antidote. He would have died without it." She covered her hands with medical chakra, and applied a layer to Naruto's chest. The wound there was massive and was burned thoroughly, obviously caused by that direct hit from an explosive umbrella. Meanwhile, the demon brothers were once again having problems with their chain gloves. The first brother looked at the broken links of the chain that were scattered across the ground. "We should have brought an extra one, brother." The second brother nodded in agreement. He turned around to face his sibling, and somehow also ended up facing the double doors that led into the Mizukage's tower. He was just in time to see Zabuza's sword appear through the space between doors and slowly work its way down, cutting the doors open. Zabuza himself stumbled through the doors, deep wounds and blood scattered across his body. "Zabuza-san," both brothers yelled. They dashed forward and caught the big man right before he fell to the ground. Zabuza talked, with visible effort showing on his face, to the brothers. "Where's Naruto and Haku? We have to make our escape, now." "Escape? Why Zabuza-san?" the first brother said. "Was the Mizukage too powerful for you?" the second said. "I'm sure that if the three of us worked together." Zabuza pushed the brothers to the side and pulled the wrappings off of his face so that he could cough blood onto the ground. "It wasn't the cage who did this to me. The person in the tower was an imposter," he said once he finished. "What do you mean, imposter?" the first brother asked. "Then where's the real cage?" the second one said. Zabuza stood up and brushed himself off. "I don't know. He's probably still in the tower somewhere, since he was manipulating it during my fight with the other guy." Zabuza looked into the sky as a few rain clouds appeared overhead. "I had already expected Kido to try something like this, telling someone to henge into him and fight me in his stead. He never was one for a good battle." A downpour started, gushing water down on the tower from way up high. "What I didn't expect was for his double to be that powerful. I couldn't even lay a finger on him." "You didn't land a single hit?" one of the brothers asked. "Yeah, I hit him all right, but hitting him wasn't the problem. I couldn't hurt him at all." Zabuza scanned the area. "You guys did a good job pushing the Mizukage's army back. You depleted their strength by at least 80. He looked back towards the demon brothers. "Where's Naruto and Haku? It's time for us to leave." The demon brothers pointed towards Zabuza's left where Haku was still on the ground, being treated by the Anbu. Naruto was on his feet, stumbling back and forth trying to keep his balance. He had his shirt open so a small gash was visible in his chest. It seemed to be rapidly closing up, so Naruto would probably be injury-less in a few more minutes. Zabuza started to approach the group, his escape plan already in his brain. He looked to his right, into the battlefield. Even after all this time passed, there seemed to be at least 3 Kagaya left, fighting for their lives against the last 20 members of the Mizukage's army. "That should do," Zabuza thought. "We'll leave the way that we came." Zabuza turned back towards where Haku was, and suddenly froze in place. He pulled his sword out of its sheath. The demon brothers saw Zabuza's look of surprise and looked towards Haku as well. There was something very weird going on over there. They looked on as the female Enbu slowly rose to her feet, a look of pure terror on her face. Even after standing up completely straight, she continued to rise until her feet were no longer on the ground. She silently mouthed the words, "Help me," towards the brothers and Zabuza. "Someone's choking her," one of the brothers stated. "Someone invisible." Naruto had already drawn his own blade, and was also facing the female Anbu. From his position he could clearly see what was wrong. He could see fingers wrapped around her neck, squeezing the life out of her. What made things strange was the fact that the fingers appeared to be made out of water, and were connected to a watery arm that had extended out of the ground. There was no body as far as Naruto could tell. Just an extremely long arm that had stretched out of the ground. Naruto set his feet and aimed his sword at the arm. "Don't worry," he said to the Anbu. "I'll get you free." He rushed forward as soon as he was done shouting. "Wait, Naruto," Zabuza said from his position hundreds of feet away. "Forget about her. Grab Haku and come over here." "What? How could I just forget about her? She's the one who saved Haku," Naruto said. He ran towards the arm and tried to cut it off of the Anbu, But, to his utter surprise, his sword went right through it. Suddenly, a second arm burst from the ground, uppercutting Naruto right in the chin. The boy flew through the air and fell to the ground, hard. He spit out blood as he felt pain rack his body, stemming from his chest wound. Naruto looked towards the Anbu, who was still in the grasp of the water arm. Now there was a second arm that was also extending out of the ground. Naruto watched as a mass of water began to slowly rise out of the ground, becoming shaped more and more like a human as time passed. It was attached to both arms. Naruto, hurry up and grab Haku before he finishes materializing. If you take any longer we won't be able to escape, Zabuza said to his apprentice. Naruto was still paralyzed by the pain, so he could only watch as the water transformed into a person who looked several years older than him. This guy was dressed in a raincoat, and his pants were devoid of any kunai holsters, or any weapon holsters at all for that matter. There were two orange star symbols printed on his coat, one on the back and one on the sleeve. There was also an orange symbol drawn on this guy's left eye, somehow, which appeared to be in the shape of a star. The orange stars obviously meant something, but what that wasn't very clear. He looked at Naruto and smiled, while continuing to choke the female Anbu. Hi there, Naruto. I've heard great things about you. He pointed towards himself with the thumb of his left hand. The name's Hitode, but that is more of a title than a name. You can call me Hito for short. There's a starfish pattern on his coat, and his name even means starfish. Plus, his eye has a star drawn on it. Is that supposed to stand for something? Naruto forced himself to stand to his feet and aimed his sword at the water guy's throat. Drop her, now. If you don't, I'll kill you, Naruto said. Hito balled up his left fist, before spinning around and slamming it into the female Anbu's face, knocking her out with ease. There, I dropped her, he said, watching as the woman flew through the air and experienced a vicious landing that probably shattered a few bones. Naruto didn't take that very well. He jumped forward and swung his sword downwards with all his might, catching Hito with his back turned. Hito sidestepped at the last second, just avoiding a fatal blow. However, even with his quick reaction, he still lost his arm to Naruto's blade. Naruto smirked. This guy isn't so tough. Naruto watched the arm tumble through the air. I'll finish this guy off in no time, Zabuza-sensei. Then we can go back inside and finish the cage off. Zabuza turned to the demon brothers. Shinji, go and grab Haku, once you have him take the escape route that we discussed yesterday. Make sure that you do not engage that guy while you do all of this. Just run away as fast as you can. The two brothers nodded and dashed towards Haku's position. The first one picked him up, and both rushed off to the east, running on top of the tower's moat as if it was a sidewalk. Naruto watched this spectacle with obvious confusion on his face. Why is Zabuza so insistent on us escaping now? I could kill this guy with my hands tied behind my back. He looked at Hito's severed arm again. I was able to take away his ability to perform jutsus. In addition, his taijutsu should be useless now unless he fights with a leg style. He's no longer a threat. Naruto lifted his sword and shoved it into its sheath. He raised his right hand in front of his face with his fingers forming half of a seal. I'm going to finish you off in style, Naruto declared to his opponent. He disappeared using one of Zabuza's signature disappearing techniques. When Naruto reappeared behind Hitode, he was all set to take him out with a horizontal slice. But just as he landed on the ground behind Hito, his face met with the guy's left fist. The fist was attached to the arm that Naruto had removed from Hito 3 seconds earlier, and the arm had somehow stretched to several times its former length. Blood exploded from Naruto's nose as he was sent flying by this violent attack. Hitode allowed his left arm to fall to the ground, since it was now 10 feet long. Zabuza already showed me that move when we fought, Naruto. Attacks like that won't work on me. He raised his fingers in front of his face and muttered, Kai. When Hitode dispelled his jutsu, his stretched out arm burst into water, leaving his real arm attached to his body. The severed arm that was lying on the ground also burst into water. Naruto's grip on his sword dissolved and the blade broke out of his hand, flipping through the air and clanging against the ground several feet away from its owner, as his back slammed into the earth. Naruto felt like all the life had been drained from his body by that punch. None of his muscles were working anymore. That guy's strength is unreal. No one, not even Zabuza, has ever hit me this hard. And he did it with the arm that I had cut off. Naruto eyed the puddle of water where the original arm had landed. Now I know why Zabuza wants to leave so badly. Anyone who can regenerate that fast after an injury can't be defeated by physical attacks. Naruto struggled with all of his might to turn his head towards his sword. Our swords are the only weapon that me and Zabuza rely on. If our enemy can't be hurt by them, then there's no way that we can win. Hitoad started to flex his new arm. Now you know why I was named Starfish. A starfish is an animal that can regenerate so well from injury, that even if one of its 5 limbs is cut off it can regenerate its body completely. In fact, a starfish can regenerate so well that even the severed limb becomes a new body. Watch as I demonstrate. Hito did a string of hand seals ending with the ram. Naruto turned his head the other way, only to see that Hitoad could create Bunshin from lost limbs. Shit, this definitely isn't good. See, the arm you cut off has become a new soldier under my control. And, in case you were wondering, he can perform jutsus since he has just as much chakra as me. In fact, the only difference between us is the act that he is lacking a brain, which I can compensate for by giving him orders. Hitoad pointed to the east. Go chase after Haku, and bring him back here, alive. The arm, Bunshin dashed off in that direction, following the demon brothers. Hitoad slowly approached the fallen Naruto, cracking his fingers as he walked. And now to finish you off. He raised his foot, lifting it over Naruto's head. He started to press his sandal into Naruto's face. Any last words? Naruto felt his head being ground into the earth, but he had nothing to say. He silently watched as Hito removed his foot from his face and lifted his sandal into the air. Once Naruto had seen that the foot had gone up as high as it would, he closed his eyes and braced himself for impact. Well, if you're not going to say anything, then you must have no regrets. Hito said. Prepare yourself. Naruto heard a loud smack just as Hito finished his sentence. He opened his eyes to see what had happened, and saw Zabuza standing over him, with the position of his sword and arm signifying that he had just swung his weapon into Hito, using the blunt side not the blade. Hito stumbled sideways clutching his chin, putting him out of range to attack Naruto any further. He ducked a second attack from Zabuza, which was a horizontal slash, and then jumped to the side, out of the way of another sword slash. Hito knocked Zabuza's sword to the side by kicking it with his heel, and dashed in before delivering a quick jab to Zabuza. He followed that up with a short uppercut, which staggered Zabuza. Then, he cocked back for a right hook, and threw the punch, but Zabuza leaned backwards so that the attack sailed over his face. From Naruto's position on the ground, he watched as Zabuza jumped backwards from Hito, careful to keep his foe within his sword's range. Zabuza stuck his arm out behind himself, and let go of his sword. Naruto could see that the sword was somehow floating in midair, only inches away from the palm of Zabuza's hand. Zabuza assumed his signature fighting stance with the sword still hovering in midair, forming a half handseal in front of his face. I've never seen this move before. Is this one of the silent killing techniques? Naruto thought. At this point, Hito combined his amazing ability to stretch his limbs with a front thrust kick to attack Zabuza. Zabuza caught the kick with his right hand, leaving his sword still hovering in his left. However, the stretch kick pushed him backwards, out of his sword's range. Hito muttered, "Kai," and his leg burst into water right in Zabuza's hand. Hito took a more relaxed stance, now that he was nowhere near close enough for Zabuza to attack. He rubbed his chin gingerly, as if it was paining him. You certainly do learn fast, Zabuza. I didn't expect you to figure out that cuts and scrapes don't hurt me, but blunt objects do. Hito snapped his chin into place, before raising his arms in front of his face, and raising his left knee inches off of the ground. This type of stance was well suited for kickboxers, but Hito gave no indication that he was a master of any taijutsu style. Make your move, Zabuza, Hito said, watching his opponent with intense eyes. Zabuza smirked beneath his mask. Giving me this much space is a mistake you will deeply regret very soon. He entered his silent killing stance again, but this time he actually molded chakra using the handseal in front of his face. His sword, that was still hovering in the air, slowly began spinning at a very slow speed, like the second hand on the clock. Hito kept his eyes on Zabuza, daring him to try whatever technique he was planning. Naruto almost thought that he heard Zabuza whisper something beneath his breath. It sounded like buzzsaw. Slowly, mist began to fill the air, hiding Zabuza from view. Naruto knew, from his own training in Zabuza's style, that the giant could be anywhere now, silently stalking his opponent until he found just the right moment. That's why it didn't surprise him when the mist cleared and Zabuza was nowhere in sight. Hito spun on his heel, just as Zabuza reappeared behind him, and threw a violent roundhouse kick at Zabuza's midsection. In what can only be described as a feat of impossible agility and flexibility, Zabuza managed to crouch so deeply towards the ground that he was able to move under the kick, even while holding his left hand behind him with the palm pointed straight up so that his sword wouldn't touch the ground. Naruto looked at Zabuza's left palm and noted that the sword was spinning rapidly just inches away from it like a buzzsaw. This is when things got brutal. Hito had put way too much force behind that kick, so he couldn't stop himself from spinning until his back was facing Zabuza. Zabuza stabbed his buzzsaw right into Hito's torso, resulting in what should have been a very violent spectacle. As Hito's midsection was being sawed to pieces, the expression on his face didn't match the pain he should have been feeling. At first, Naruto thought that he just looked extremely pissed off. Hitoad balled up his right fist, but before he could do anything with it, Zabuza's sword, buzzsaw, chopped it off. This left Hito standing straight up with one arm while Zabuza worked a saw through his chest. Naruto noticed something very wrong with Hito at this point. He wasn't bleeding at all. Instead, what appeared to be gallons and gallons of water were being thrown into the air as his chest was being carved through. At the same time, it didn't seem like Hito was taking any damage from the assault. His chest seemed to be regenerating just as fast as it was damaged. Naruto tried to force himself to his feet, thinking that maybe he needed to help Zabuza out before Hito broke free of this jutsu. Just as Naruto determined that Zabuza wasn't doing any damage, the situation changed. Hito's expression changed from pissed off to extremely desperate, as his mouth filled up with some kind of liquid. Naruto was banking on blood, but he knew better than to bet on this sort of thing. Naruto heard a short noise that sounded like a tomato getting chopped by a kitchen knife, and blood tumbled through the air, splattering onto the ground surprisingly close to Naruto. So he does bleed, Naruto thought. Hito spit out what looked and smelled like sea foam, dropping to one knee as Zabuza continued to buzzsaw him to death. He looked like he was dying, but just as he came as close as possible to falling to the ground, it seemed as if he caught a second wind. Naruto heard an extremely loud clanging noise as Hito regrew his right arm and grabbed Zabuza's sword by the blade, stopping the buzzsaw attack. He elbowed Zabuza as he stood back up, without releasing the sword from his grip. Then, with his left hand, he formed a semi-handseal. His right arm grew 3 times its length, submerging Zabuza's weapon into the ground. Then Hito took a page from the Terminator 2, and turned his arm into a sword, namely a massive, dark-colored weapon with no cutting edge that was covered in thin spines and started at his elbow. The way that the blade looked was oddly familiar to both Zabuza and Naruto, but neither could place where they've seen that sword before. One phrase did come to Naruto's mind, however: it doesn't cut, it grinds and tears. Hito spun around and brought his sword arm down on Zabuza, but the Junin bounced the weapon to the side using a kunai. Then he ripped his sword back out of the ground and used the blunt side to knock Hito into the air. Naruto watched as Hito flew to the side, and literally exploded into a shower of water in midair. Apparently, Zabuza's buzzsaw attack did do actual damage to Hito, and once he was hit that hard with a blunt object, his body separated where Zabuza had been cutting him. Naruto tried to congratulate Zabuza on his victory, reciting the words, "Wow, Zabuza-sensei, that attack of yours was awesome," in his head, but all of his energy was spent. He couldn't say a word because his mouth felt paralyzed, almost as if he had chakra exhaustion. Zabuza was absolutely spent after performing that jutsu of his, so he began to rest on his knees, taking deep breaths to replenish his strength. He glanced over at where Hito had fallen, where there was a large puddle of water on the ground. He sighed, before putting his giant sword in its sheath. Then, he stumbled towards Naruto, and picked up his student's sword on the way there. When he reached Naruto, he untied the boy's sheath from his back and retied it to his own waist. Then he sheathed Naruto's sword into it. Zabuza looked down at Naruto, and reached downwards, peering under Naruto's eyelids and checking several aspects of the boy's face. Looks like he absorbed all of your chakra with his attack. Zabuza muttered. Naruto couldn't talk, but he still managed to put an expression onto his face that showed Zabuza that he didn't understand what he said at all. That other kid, the one who calls himself Starfish, is a chakra absorber. You see a lot of them these days, people who steal chakra while they attack. You should make sure to avoid his attacks next time. That punch he hit you with was only a glancing blow. Imagine how bad you'd feel if you took one of his roundhouse kicks. To add impact to his statement, Zabuza rubbed a bruise on his ribs that he had since he had emerged from the cage's tower. Next time was the only part of that sentence that Naruto caught. He glanced over at the puddle formerly known as Hitode again, and to his utter dismay, it was staring back at him with just one eye, Hito's orange one. Naruto would have shuddered if he could. Zabuza caught Naruto's glance and looked over at Hitode as well. Guess that's our cue to leave, was all he said before he hoisted Naruto onto his shoulder and made a dash for the crowd of the Mizukage's soldiers and the Kagaya that were in between them and the village's exit. Hito watched the pair leave, but he wasn't anywhere near regenerated enough to chase after them. Go ahead and run, Zabuza. I still have a few tricks up my sleeve. Hito wished that his mouth was still intact, so he could smirk evilly after he had that thought. Just as Zabuza was nearing the last 15 members of the Mizukage's army, two at the back noticed his approach. Hey, is that Zabuza? One of them asked. I don't know. Another one replied. Hey, is that you, Zabuza? He said towards the large swordsman. Instead of answering the question, Zabuza shoved the guy to the side. He planted his elbow into the other guy's face, and continued to knock person after person aside as he made his way towards the bridge that led to the town square. He broke through the crowd of ninja seconds later, but he stopped just as he neared the bridge over the moat between the Mizukage's tower and the rest of Kiri. He turned around and took one final look at the Mizukage's tower. I will see you again, Kito, and next time no one will be able to protect you from me, he thought. As Zabuza was staring at the tower, he couldn't help but peer downwards when he heard a loud cry from in front of him. Zabuza noticed that the entire crowd of ninja was starting to converge on one person. She appeared to be the last Kagaya left, and only looked about Haku's age. There was at least 10 ninja around the Kagaya, and all of them had their weapons drawn. Umbrellas, kunai, and even a couple sickles were all pointed at the girl's neck. The ninja sneered evilly at the girl who they would certainly be killing in a few seconds. Zabuza chuckled to himself. Those Kagaya sure served their purpose well. They lasted longer than anyone would have expected, and even after all of my business has concluded there is still one left. He began turning around to leave this area, but then he caught the look on the Kaguya's face. Those pained eyes, the way she was shielding herself with her hands. Zabuza realized that unlike the rest of the Kagaya, this kid didn't come here ready to die. He glanced over at the battlefield, and noted the way that the other Kagaya fell, with bone swords in hand, cursing Mist Village and the Mizukage even until their last breaths. That was the dignified way to go. This girl on the other hand. Zabuza saw that the girl was talking to her executioners. He was able to read her lips, even from such a great distance away. Please don't kill me. I'll do anything, just spare me. Damn it, kid. Zabuza cursed to himself. You're the last Kagaya. If you die this way, this is how your entire clan will be remembered. Zabuza put Naruto down and drew out his blade. I can't let the Kagaya fade away like this. Just as one of the ninja finally decided to finish the girl off, leaning in to kill her with his kunai, Zabuza suddenly appeared between them. With a single, giant swing of his weapon, Zabuza killed 5 ninja in one fell swoop. The rest of the Mizukage's ninja scattered, seeing how easily that Zabuza could destroy them. Zabuza turned his gaze on the final Kagaya. The girl looked badly wounded, with blood trailing down her useless left arm and hundreds of small cuts and gashes all over her body. She must have been in the thick of this battle to carry that many wounds. The Kagaya looked up at her savior, before dropping onto her knees and bowing to Zabuza. Thank you. If it wasn't for you, Zabuza grabbed the kid by her shoulders and forced her onto her feet. What the hell are you doing? Your ancestors must be rolling in their graves, seeing you act in such a pitiful manner. Do you even know what pride is? The kid scratched her head through the straight, black hair that covered it. She raised the black dots that Kagaya considered eyebrows, appearing completely clueless to what Zabuza said. Pride? That's right, Zabuza said. Pride. Isn't that why you came out here and fought all of these enemies? Isn't that what all of your brethren died for? They wanted to show this village that they weren't just garbage that could be thrown away once they were no longer needed. They were trying to prove that their advanced bloodline was just as powerful now as it was during the Great War, during which the Kagaya defended water country with their lives. Isn't that what you were fighting for as well? The girl still looked dumbstruck. Not really. They told me that if I didn't fight, they'd kill me, so I had to fight, she said, gesturing towards the pile of dead Kagaya on the ground. But seeing as how I'm the only one left, I guess that pride of theirs isn't that useful at all. At least if you're planning on staying alive. She giggled at the end of her sentence, laughing at some hidden joke that Zabuza didn't catch. Zabuza sighed, putting his sword away. I guess so. What's your name, kid? She pointed at herself, smiling. My name is Mao. Zabuza pulled out a map of the village from his pocket. He traced lines on it and made an X on a point outside the village. He finished his outline of the village by drawing several lines that led to the X, and then circling it in red. What are you doing, Zabuza? The man said, finishing the girl's sentence. He handed Mao the map that he had just been working on. You look very injured, he stated. In your condition, it would be better if you avoid any additional battles. Chances are, I'm going to see a scrap or two before I make it out of the village, so we should split ways for now. Follow that map and it will take you to secret tunnels leading out of the village. I doubt you'll run into any fighting if you follow that route. Zabuza put away his pen. Get going, kid. The girl nodded, and slowly walked away, following the directions on the map to the letter. She turned around once she reached the middle of the bridge. I'll see you soon, Zabuza-sama, she said, waving him goodbye. Then she started walking away again. Zabuza scratched his head. I can't figure that kid out at all. Oh well. He stepped back over to Naruto, who had been watching the entire spectacle. Fortunately, the boy was still paralyzed, so he was unable to comment. Zabuza lifted Naruto back up onto his shoulder, and continued his journey out of the village. 15 minutes later, Zabuza carried Naruto through the entire village of Kirikagore in just that much time. His ninja sprint wasn't heralded as the fastest in water country for nothing. He rounded the last corner he'd have to step around before leaving the village. In front of him, past at least 50 tall buildings, were the gates leading out of Kiri. Zabuza doubled his speed, rapidly approaching the gates. Just as he neared the edge of the 20th building, Zabuza felt a series of low rumbles in the ground, followed by an extremely high-pitched, screeching noise that was exactly like nails being dragged against a chalkboard. He stopped on a dime, right at the edge of a four-way intersection, as a massive torrent of water crossed the street in front of him, traveling from his left to his right. How did a tsunami make it this far into the village, he thought. A shiny object fell out of the wave and cut Zabuza in the arm, leaving a deep gash. He jumped away from the tsunami to avoid further damage. Zabuza watched on as the waves slowly died down, and saw that the wave had been filled with what appeared to be thousands of swords. The buildings that had been affected by the wave all looked like pincushions, with all of these swords sticking into them. What the hell, was all Zabuza had to say about that. Oi, Zabuza-kun, a voice said from on top of one of the buildings. Looks like my bladed tsunami technique caught you right before you finished escaping. How fortunate for me. The man muttered, Kai, and dispelled his jutsu, causing all of the blades that littered the street to burst into water. Zabuza looked up at the person who said all of that. It was the Mizukage, or at least it could have been. After all, the last time Zabuza ran into the Mizukage it was an imposter. You're not that kid, hanging into the Mizukage to piss me off, are you? Zabuza said. The Mizukage smiled, before drawing out a kunai. He slid it into his arm, causing blood to squirt out and tumble off of the roof, splattering into the ground below. Hitoad doesn't bleed, he stated. Zabuza put Naruto down and drew out his sword. So it is you, he started. Then I guess that you've finally mustered up the courage to fight me. The Mizukage chuckled. Zabuza, Zabuza, Zabuza. If I had ever been interested in fighting you, I would have done it back in the tower instead of having a doppelganger do it for me. I have no interest in dueling with someone who is so far beneath me. A vein started throbbing angrily in Zabuza's forehead. Beneath you? He grumbled. Now don't get so angry, Zabuza-kun. At least not yet. I came out here because I wanted to explain something to you, that's all. The Mizukage said. Enough talking, Kito. Zabuza said. Fight me now and we'll see who's beneath who. The Mizukage frowned. You know Zabuza-kun, I am sort of disappointed in you. I went through all of this effort, gave you so much to work with, and you still don't understand what you should be doing. The Mizukage looked into the sky, apparently reminiscing about a past event. I still remember that day, 13 years ago, when I killed your precious sensei so I could become Mizukage. I was even forced to peel the very hat that I am wearing right now off of his dead body, so that I could clean the blood off of it and wear it myself. Do you remember what you told me after that, only a few hours later? You said that. I said that I would kill you. I told you that you would not get away with killing my master. Zabuza said. The Mizukage looked back down at Zabuza. That's right. That's the unwritten promise that you gave me all of those years before. It's the promise that I've been holding you to for years now, that my life would be ended by your hands. He's been holding me to it? Zabuza thought. The Mizukage sighed. I've never been the type of man who could settle for a normal existence. Becoming the Mizukage was always my dream, because I was sure that if that ever happened I could do something that everyone would remember, something that would turn me into a legend. But the more that I've thought about it, the more clear it has become to me that no matter how far I climb up the ladder, I'll never be able to accomplish something worth remembering. Just look at all the cages that preceded me. The first Mizukage helped to end the age of wars between the 5 great nations along with the first Hokage. He even sent his younger brother to Konoha so he could become the second Hokage. The second Mizukage single-handedly defeated the Sanbi no Isanade and sealed him into a sword, making Water Country the only nation that hasn't seen a demon attack in over 50 years. The third Mizukage brought the ancient silent killing art back into existence, teaching it to you, as well as a few other members of the village's Anbu squad. So far, the only thing that anyone can compliment me on is leading the most uneventful, boring period in this village's entire existence. People don't even call it Blood Mist Village anymore. I guess that I'm a failure in that respect. The Mizukage said. Is there a point to this speech, or do you just like to hear yourself talk? Zabuza said. I've decided that being killed by the next cage is something I'm willing to be remembered for. The Mizukage admitted. I really believed that you were strong enough to kill me, but as years passed following your promise I started to think that maybe we are on completely different levels power-wise. That's when I got a message from the Hokage that said he wanted us to take Naruto off of his hands. I was struck with inspiration at this point, and came up with a brilliant plan. If you couldn't kill me by yourself, I'd give you some helpers to give you a better edge in our ensuing fight. First, I put Naruto in your care, then I told you where to find Haku, and I let you retain your position as Anbu captain even though it would have been so easy to remove you from it. You had all of these people under your control, but you still attacked me alone, during the day, and while announcing your presence before you even entered the tower. That's what told me that all of this was completely hopeless. You are far too convinced that your powers measure up to mine, so you didn't even consider trying to overwhelm me with those soldiers I gave you. The Mizukage leapt off of the building, falling almost 20 stories, but he still managed to land both gracefully and silently on the ground. He stood up from his cat-like landing stance, and looked Zabuza right in the eye. You know, I was watching your fight with Hatode. I noticed a huge flaw in your style that prevents you from ever being able to kill me. He took several steps towards Zabuza. You use a silent killing style that emphasizes a combination of speed and absolute silence. The initial strike in the style cuts the foe's vital points while the user remains completely undetectable to the ears and eyes of the opponent. However, it's damn near impossible to silently assassinate someone if you're lugging a sword that huge around. Even if you get an advantage over your opponent and end up behind them, anyone Junin level or higher will be able to react during the 1.5 second interval before you finish swinging your blade. In other words, that sword of yours and the silent killing arts are completely incompatible. You're either going to have to switch weapons or switch styles if you want to beat me. Zabuza couldn't believe what he was hearing. He thinks that there's a flaw in my style. My style's perfect. It's never failed me before. He looked at the cage's serious expression. He must believe in that assumption he just made, because he isn't smirking like he normally does after one of his jokes. Zabuza-san, 2 voices yelled from above. Zabuza looked up to see that the demon brothers had jumped off of one of the buildings, landing on the ground next to him. They both had very rough landings, especially the one that was still carrying Haku, who had yet to wake up. What are the 2 of you doing here? Zabuza asked. You should be miles out of the village by now. About that, one of the brothers said. The other one pointed towards the roof of a building, where Hito was now jumping down after them. He landed on the opposite side of the brothers and Zabuza than where the Mizukage was. He's been chasing us ever since you sent us away. We couldn't shake him, and if we went to the rendezvous point with him on our tail, he'd know where our base of operations is. I've been waiting for the two of you forever. The Mizukage said, now that you've brought Haku here, I will be taking him. What do you want with Haku? Zabuza asked. Well, we both already understand that there's no way that you'll ever be killing me, so it's time for me to start grooming your replacement. I think that Haku's ice-based bloodline would be a good counter for my techniques. What do you think? The Mizukage said. Zabuza aimed his sword at the cage's throat. There's no way that you'll be getting your hands on Haku. The Mizukage said, oh, while snapping his fingers. Suddenly 11 mounds of water started to rise from the ground in a circle around Zabuza, Naruto, the Demon Brothers, and Haku. Each one turned into an exact replica of Hitode. The Mizukage started to count on his fingers. Let's see, you cut Hito into 11 pieces, so 11 clones were formed, including the one that contains his brain. Raise your hand, the real Hitode. One of the clones behind Zabuza raised his arm. I'm right over here. The Mizukage, who was now standing behind a group of Hito clones, did a string of hand seals. Look alive, Zabuza-kun. This is where you show me if my assumptions about you were wrong. The Mizukage finished his seal string with the dragon. Water style. Bladed tsunami technique. Several of the Hito clones stepped away from each other, allowing Zabuza to see that the head of an enormous dragon was coming out of the wall to the left of him, with its mouth pulled into a snarl. The Mizukage jumped on top of the head. Meet my pet dragon, Koryu. He looked down at the dragon. Say hi to Zabuza, Koryu. The dragon opened its mouth, revealing that inside was a row of very sharp-looking fangs, as well as a pool of water. Behind me, Zabuza said. The brothers complied, moving directly behind the giant. The Mizukage snickered. Are you sure that you should do that, Zabuza? I'm sure that you and those twins could escape if you put down the kids. Zabuza started to levitate his sword in the palm of his hand. I was told never to use this jutsu twice in one day, he remembered. Very well, the Mizukage said. All of the Hito clones except for one burst into water, just as the cage commenced his attack. The dragon belched out a torrent of water, forming a beam of the stuff that flew directly at Zabuza. Zabuza began to rapidly spin his sword using his chakra, using the buzzsaw for defense this time, rather than attack. As the water flew towards Zabuza, the Mizukage shifted his hands from the dragon seal to the boar. In midair, only a few feet away from Zabuza, about half of the water that Koryu was spitting out transformed into swords, translucent blades that appeared to be made out of the same marble that formed the cage's tower. When the beam and the saw collided, gallons of water and swords were thrown into the air. The noise created by the two attacks was ear-shattering. After all, each time one of the hundreds of swords spit by the dragon hit Zabuza's sword, it created a very loud clanging noise. Before long, Zabuza felt pain shoot through his right arm. Damn it, how could I be cramping up at a time like this? Zabuza thought. The rotation of the sword slowed down ever so slightly, and one of Koryu's swords flew into Zabuza's shoulder, leaving a deep wound. The Mizukage laughed. Don't slow down now, Zabuza-kun, those swords certainly won't. He snapped his fingers and the dragon spat out swords and water at an even faster rate. Zabuza forced his sword to spin faster, blocking this wave of swords with all that he had. He felt a wave of force travel up his arm as one of the swords collided into his own at a very bad angle. He lost control of his blade and it tumbled to the side, leaving Zabuza completely vulnerable. Fortunately, just as Zabuza lost control, the Mizukage stopped his attack. Only 3 swords pierced Zabuza's torso, causing him to fall to the ground. He looked up at the Mizukage. Why? Did I stop my attack, when I could have easily killed you? The Mizukage finished. The smile didn't leave his face. I don't want to watch you die, Zabuza-kun. He made a slight gesture to his left. My only goal is that over there. Zabuza turned his head, only to see that Haku was now in the arms of Hitode, still sleeping from the effects of whatever poison he had been hit with. It was hard to grab this kid with all those damn swords flying at me. Hito said. So it was a good thing that Zabuza was stopping some of them. It gave me all the time I needed to snatch Haku away, after knocking those 2 out of course. Hito gestured towards the demon brothers, who were both unconscious on the ground. The Mizukage jumped off of the head of Koryu, landing on top of a building. Well, Zabuza-kun, it's been fun, but I think it is time that me and Hito leave. He started to do some hand seals, which Zabuza recognized as the ones for a very powerful teleportation jutsu. With it, the cage could easily transport himself, Hito, and Haku to any place in the village. Just as the Mizukage was nearing the final seal, a large gust of wind started to blow over the top of the building he was on, causing his robes to flow wildly. The Mizukage shielded his face from some dust that blew towards it with his hands, effectively ending his jutsu. The Mizukage rose his hands back into position so he could finish his jutsu, but then he felt metal being pressed against his neck, sending chills up his spine. He could tell from the texture that it wasn't a kunai or a shuriken, it felt more like a needle. He slightly adjusted his head so that he could look at the person behind him. "I guess that I got a little too careless," he said, letting this woman sneak up behind me. Although I must admit that she certainly is quieter than Zabuza, the cage turned his head a little further, and looked into the person's eyes. "And beautiful as well. Say, would you consider going out on a date with your cage? Turn your head straight forward, and don't say anything else. I'll kill you if I have to," the woman said, forcing the cage to comply by digging the needle a little deeper into his neck. Hito's eyes grew wide when he realized who it was. No way. I drained all of her chakra, there's no way that she could be standing. She should still be lying right where I left her. The blue-haired woman drew out a syringe that was filled with a blue liquid from her Anbu vest, being careful not to move the needle in her left hand away from the Mizukage's neck. This needle is a very concentrated chakra supplement. A single injection from this needle, administered by a medical specialist like me, can restore a person's chakra supply in seconds. She pocketed that needle and pulled out a green one. This one turns a person invisible for 15 seconds. She put that one away as well. And the one that I have aimed at the cage's neck will kill a man instantly if it so much as touches their bloodstream.
That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and do comments.